Chapter 1193. That black sun was like a ball of mud floating in the starry sky. Its original pure light was now covered with a layer of darkness. Its surface was surging violently, constantly twisting. Black flames pierced high into the starry sky like sharp thorns. That star had spontaneously moved a large distance forward. The powerful abyssal death fog's oppressive feeling forced the warriors who were not strong enough to retreat. The defensive line that had just been pushed back seemed to show signs of rebounding. It was like a greedy giant beast. The sharp thorns that reached into the starry sky devoured the dissipating black smoke of the abyssal death fog's manifestation. Its energy was still constantly growing stronger. Sector Master, the energy of the energy node is still increasing. The stability of the heaven's light world is beginning to decline. After a while, the divine artifact may have a weak energy oscillation, which will affect the connection between hundreds of worlds. LV Tianguang turned back to look at the person who spoke. He was the second in command of the Allied forces. If there was such a position, that would be the significance. However, there was no point in mentioning this now. He just suddenly remembered that a lot of information on the battlefield was handed over to this adjutant. This second in command was supposed to handle it. It should have been like this, but before Yin Nuoxing and the others barged in, there was no time to deal with any damn information at all. Only a small number of our warriors, the strongest ones, can break into that energy node. But even if they break in, the second in command muttered to himself for a while and did not finish his sentence. It's not a big problem. Huey's voice came from the side. His figure suddenly descended in front of the two of them. His body flashed with an eternal and brilliant golden light. The black energy and black blood stained on the giant shield and giant sword automatically disappeared with the flickering light. The battle had been going on for more than an hour, and he still looked energetic. The smile on his face showed that he was ready to sacrifice his life for this world at any time. The swarming dark army bared their fangs and brandished their claws. However, before they could reach 100,000 miles in front of them, a crystallized energy beam swept across the starry sky, turning them into dust in the starry sky. Even the black star did not have the appetite to devour them. In the past hour or so, Yin Nuoxing had also tried to directly attack the energy node, but the dark army that was entrenched in the surroundings had used the illegal numbers to forcefully resist the attack. As it was not a direct battle, he did not dare to use all his strength. However, he roughly estimated that even if he used all his strength, he really would not be able to do it. The Dark Army formed a seemingly loose energy barrier that could be defended in a short period of time. Moreover, it would not be a problem for them to block his attack if he did not use the power of the heavenly god of origin. Well, there was no way to use that power now. Restrictions and whatnot were indeed the most annoying. Other than the place where Yin Nuoxing and the others focused their fire, the Dark Army in other places was fighting back and forth with the people from the Heavenly Light World. The battle line and the battlefield formed a thin and weak cone. The tip of the cone was the Dark Star. It was like an arrowhead that constantly penetrated deep into the Heavenly Light World. At the moment, it did not show too much of an attack. Everyone could not figure out what it wanted to do, or rather, what the person controlling it wanted to do. However, this situation could not continue for long. They were still in a stalemate, but the warriors from the Heavenly Light World would feel tired. Even after a temporary rest, they did not recover much of their strength. However, those crazy life forms did not feel tired. Furthermore, their numbers were endless. The gap was getting bigger and bigger. The number of life forms that were surging in at every moment had reached an astonishing level. If it were not for the Supreme SUA and Yin Nuoxing guarding the battlefield at the gap, the Heavenly Light World would probably end up in the same situation as before the three of them came here. Boom! Bang! A destructive energy attack that was relatively close exploded not far away from the Dark Star. The massive spherical energy attack cleared out the Dark Army within a few hundred light years. The Dark Star was still intact. That attack had definitely destroyed a portion of the Dark Army. However, there were no signs that the number of dark creatures there had decreased. Yin Nuoxing's figure slowly landed in front of Hui and the others. At the same time, countless arrays that covered the star region appeared. Hui personally watched as Yin Nuoxing increased the number of arrays again and again. Now, he could no longer count how many arrays there were. In any case, he estimated that they could cover an area that was tens of thousands of times larger than the dark star. There isn't much time left. If we continue killing like this, there will be no end. We'll be dragged to our deaths here. Yin Nuoxing's right hand clenched his left wrist and shook it. He was calm and composed. His voice gradually surged with a hint of coldness. I'm not good at this kind of battle where I have to preserve my strength. If I kill them one by one, I won't be able to clear them out even if I kill them in groups. Hui laughed bitterly. He looked at the massive gap in the starry sky in the distance. That was the only passageway that led to the void outside from the heavenly light world. His gaze flickered, and he suddenly said, "Feng, do you have a way to seal up that gap?" Yin Nuoxing quickly glanced at the depths of the starry sky. In order to reach that place, they had to clear out the dark army that had gathered into a ball of starry sky ink along the way. At the very least, they had to destroy a large portion of them. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to reach that place. Furthermore, in the depths of the starry sky, there were countless abyssal death fog and its manifestations that surged in like a black waterfall. He also observed that when the black fog surged into the heavenly light world, it transformed into many abyssal death fog manifestations of different sizes and models. The specific process was very straightforward. It was a ball of fog molding into a bunch of monsters. It was really freewheeling. Yin Nuoxing stretched for a while, and the bones in his body were squeezed out with cracking sounds. He twisted his neck and let out a long breath. He closed his eyes for a while, and when he opened them again, his black eyes had already turned into gorgeous colors. The whites of his eyes could no longer be seen. His eyes were only filled with a dazzling, flowing radiance. I can seal it up for half an hour, at most 40 minutes. His voice turned into a strange and weak tremor, as if it was a voice that floated in from all directions and poured into everyone's minds. His gaze paused on Hui, and he hesitated for a moment. "Can you do it alone?" Hui broke into a bright smile and gave him a thumbs up. "After all, in my line of work, I have the ability to purify myself. How can I not do it?" After a while, he gritted his teeth and smiled bitterly. "You have to do it, even if you can't. If you don't seal up that gap, there will be no end to it. To seal up that gap, I can't do it, so I can only let Feng do it. If you do it, then I can only brace myself and do it." Yin Nuoxing turned his head, and only a trace of black light flowed through his colorful eyes. "Last time, in the name of repairing, you purified a world with collapsed laws. Not even dregs were left." Hui showed an awkward expression. "That was an accident, really an accident. Damn, don't look at me like that. That was really an accident. I swear in the name of the realm of the gods, this time there will definitely be no problems." LV Tianguang and the others silently took 2 steps back and decided to keep some distance from this slightly dangerous guy to avoid being purified by him. Yin Nuoxing glanced at him and sighed faintly. His body turned into a dazzling stream of light and rushed to the side, bypassing the black arrowhead. We felt uncomfortable all over because of his sigh. "Feng, don't go." "What do you mean by sighing? Do you not trust me?" "Okay, I was wrong. You can at least tell me how to do a normal purification. This is too difficult. I have to do something simple to practice." Yin Nuoxing could not hear the latter part of his words. His speed had exceeded the speed at which Huey's power of the rules spread. In the next second, he came to the side of the cone nail battle line that was guarded by the warriors of the heavenly light realm. He shook his head helplessly. How could he have so much time to prepare and practice? In this life, he had encountered too many things that were beyond his ability to do. Not to mention this life, it was also the same in the future. He always liked to be prepared for everything, but it was always not enough. Many times, many things were beyond his expectations, and he could not control it. No matter how much he prepared, he would not be able to prepare. His entire body was burning with colorful flames, and his aura spread across the galaxy. Countless magic circles behind him slowly merged with the largest magic circle, but they did not merge. The warriors who were guarding the battle line were in a state of high concentration. The sudden arrival of such a person shocked them, and they almost pulled themselves away to meet him. When they came back to their senses, they realized that it was their reinforcements, and they heaved a sigh of relief. All of you step back. Yun Nuoxing's voice reverberated across the galaxy, and it was very strange. Guard the battle line. Don't let a single manifestation pass. The warriors from the heavenly light world cupped their hands respectfully and methodically controlled the battle line to slowly shrink and solidify, condensing into a massive energy barrier that stretched out for countless miles. The warriors who were still fighting outside the barrier also received the message and retreated as they fought. When they entered the defensive barrier, they turned around to maintain the barrier and assist their own people in retreating from the battlefield. Many people hurriedly heaved a sigh of relief. If they were allowed to continue fighting on the battlefield, their mentality might be the first to collapse. They had been fighting endlessly for a very long time, and there was no time for them to take a breather. If they were to continue fighting like this, even heavenly gods would be exhausted to death. Yin Nuoxing passed through the barrier alone. Before the manifestations of the abyssal death fog that were chasing after the warriors from the heavenly light world could reach the side of the barrier, the endless black monsters turned into half-smoke and half-solid existences. The most fatal parts of their bodies exuded astonishing energy, and their energy levels ranged from beginner to post-god level. They squeezed into a ball of chaotic smoke and headed straight for Yun Nuoxing. A spot that was the size of a person could receive dozens of attacks at the same time, possibly from several monsters or dozens of monsters at the same time. At this moment, almost half of the galaxy was filled with endless enmity towards him. If the intent that rushed towards him were to land on an ordinary heavenly god, it might cause his mind to collapse from the pressure and cause him to lose his consciousness. The faces of the warriors from the heavenly light world were pale. Previously, they had been fighting as a group and had not tried to let the powers of the abyssal death fog completely combine into one. At this moment, this discovery caused fear to rise in their hearts. At the same time, they looked worriedly at Yun Nuoxing, who had walked out of the barrier, and wanted to ask him to return immediately. The elements of nirvana and the gorgeous energy gathered in the palm of Yun Nuoxing's right hand. If one opened their eyes wide, they could still see those gorgeous energy particles chasing each other, slowly condensing into a ball, and the elements of nirvana had been obediently stabilized in the center from the beginning, fixed by those gorgeous energy connections. He slowly raised his drooping right hand, and the beautiful energy gathered into a ball of light in his palm. The energy lines gathered from the surrounding star region, and as if they were pressed down by a heavy object, they collapsed under the elements of destruction. The light on Yun Nuoxing's body also rapidly flowed into his right hand, and the black cloud-like bone wings behind him fluttered once again. Unstoppable destructive energy was born in his right palm. Yun Nuoxing withdrew all of his control, allowing the energy to flow into the ball of energy in his palm without any restraint. That ball of energy was so brilliant that it was as if a colorful sun had been born in the star region. It was magnificent, but it made people feel suffocated. Take this star region with you and turn it into dust, Yun Nuoxing muttered in a low voice, and his strange laughter caused the starry sky to tremble slightly. He slowly pressed the ball of light in his hand against the starry sky in front of him, as if he was pressing it against a wall. In front of the ball of light, the space condensed into a substance, as if it had turned into a mirror. It was easily shattered by the colorful energy ball, and spiderweb-like cracks appeared in the space. Fragments fell from the starry sky, and the fragments that reflected the starry sky silently disappeared. It was as if this space had suddenly disappeared. The moment the starry sky was shattered, a colorful sun suddenly appeared in this star region, and then it suddenly expanded. The brilliant energy that erupted in this starry sky attracted the attention of everyone in the heavenly light sector. The light pierced through all the rules and restrictions and instantly appeared in their line of sight. It was impossible not to notice it. Everyone who noticed this scene widened their eyes in shock. Space had disappeared, and they could no longer sense space. Rules and order had also disappeared at the same time. Their senses had been devoured and drawn to the void. At that moment, everyone who sensed it had the illusion that they were standing in an endless void, and there was only eternal loneliness beside them. That gaze was almost eternal. Hui was stunned for a moment, and the shield in his hand almost slipped out of his hand. Then, he casually used the shield to smash a series of manifestations. He was dumbfounded. His voice disappeared, and all the sounds in the heavenly light sector disappeared. In the first few seconds, the entire starry sky lit up with an extremely dazzling, colorful sun. Space, rules, and order disintegrated and disappeared, and so did sound. The colorful light that was constantly expanding at the end of everyone's line of sight suddenly spread out. It was bright, extremely bright, and brilliant, but it was filled with an extremely violent and merciless power. Those who sensed it could feel that everything that could be called things in the heavenly light sector, such as space-time light, energy, and the void, were all attracted by that power and fell into the depths of the colorful sun. The starry sky distorted and collapsed, and they could even see the starlight in the distance distorting and surging in that direction. The chaos 0 point was attracting everything over, clearing everything and returning everything to its original state. The state of nothingness amidst the chaos. Even the abyss death fog could not resist this power. Yun Nuoxing did not use the power of a heavenly god of origin. He only used the almost endless capacity. Once the chaos origin was activated, it would devour everything it came into contact with, including the power of the user himself. He was not worried that the almost endless amount of power would be sucked dry, because the power of a peak heavenly god of origin was enough for him to use the chaos origin to completely devour half of the 8-element sector and return everything to chaos. The remaining half would also become abnormal due to its enormous power. The order would collapse, and even if it stopped, it would become a complete mess. The infinitely expanding chaotic origin had already cleared out the star region in front of him. He could sense the aura of the land of nothingness. A terrifying starry wind blew in the heaven's light world, drawing everything in this world towards that chaotic origin. The stars shifted their positions, and the starlight was annihilated. The endless army of darkness disappeared completely the moment they came into contact with the colorful light circle. Even that dark star was forcefully dragged a distance away from the origin. Hui hurriedly put up the guardian barrier, isolating the star domain. Only then did the tilting of the heavenly light sector forcefully stop. However, he could still sense that the infinite energy and matter were crazily falling towards that space. He wanted to find Yun Nuoxing behind the brilliant light and ask him when he was going to stop. However, it would probably be useless even if he asked. If he did, there would be an explosion. Yes, that ball of infinitely condensed and compressed energy was definitely not for decoration. The distortion of the laws was too severe. He could not use his law domain. He looked at the dark star. The chaos origin had cut off the dark waterfall that was crazily pouring into the heavenly light sector, taking away most of the army of darkness. The appearance of the star gradually became clearer. Now, the abyssal death mist manifestation was still unable to stabilize its body in a place without space and laws, so it was being sucked into the chaos origin. I don't care. I'll just bite the bullet and attack. We knew that this was an opportunity. When Yun Nuoxing blasted a huge hole in the void, it was the best time to attack. He hurriedly shouted at LV Tianguang, but realized that no matter what he did, he could not make a sound. He could only slap LV Tianguang and point at the dark star. Then, he raised the guardian barrier and the giant sword and rushed towards the dark star. LV Tianguang hurriedly pressed down on his long hair that was being blown by the starry wind. In fact, that was because the space was still collapsing and shrinking towards that direction. It was as if everything was being sucked over. He opened his eyes and looked in the direction Hui was rushing towards, and instantly understood. He stretched out his hand and grabbed the second-in-command of the Alliance army. The second-in-command was stunned for a moment before he hurriedly grabbed the person beside him. Then, the unlucky person who could not even open his eyes was shocked. He subconsciously grabbed something beside him and pulled another person into his hands. Then, the group of people was dragged into a long strip that fluttered in the wind like a banner. Hui used all the energy he could to prop up the divine domain, hoping to stabilize this chaotic and crazy space. However, just as his domain opened up, he realized that what should have been a spherical domain had been sucked into the shape of a water droplet. He was at the bottom of the water droplet, the sharp tip facing the direction of the primal chaos origin. This made him speechless. He raised a shield and pushed forward the manifestation that had been blown to his side by the gale. The next second, he saw that unlucky manifestation fly with the wind, disappearing at a speed of several light years per second. He felt that he was about to fly out. Now, he was not flying forward on his own. Instead, he was being pulled down by the entire space. His domain had stabilized the space of the heavenly light world. Replacing the space to suffer this kind of pain was a new space from the outside. To put it bluntly, he had found a scapegoat, and now that he had left the safe zone, he was falling into the abyss with that scapegoat. The energy of that dark star was not weak either. It had forcibly withstood this level of suction and tearing. If Yin Nuashing did not increase the energy output, it should not have been pulled over so quickly. However, there was no need to increase the power. If it increased the power, it would have flown over. The dark army that had acted as a physical barrier had already disappeared, leaving only that lonely star hanging in the star field. Hui rushed to its surroundings against the wind and was captured by its gravity, falling to the surface of the star. The sudden calmness of the surroundings shocked and horrified him at the same time. To be able to resist the energy released by Yun Nuashing at this moment. How much energy had been accumulated here? Wah, it seems like we can talk here. What exactly has this energy node been modified into? LV Tianguang's voice came from behind him. Hui hurriedly turned his head and saw that the group of people who were fluttering in the wind had been safely captured by the gravity of this dark star. They had safely landed beside him and were sizing up the massive object in front of them. I was just about to ask you guys. Huey's cheeks twitched. The massive energy carrier in front of him had become a terrifying object that carried countless nightmares and countless dark energy. The energy that it had accumulated was probably not any less than what Yin Nuashing had injected into the chaos origin. How long has this energy node been occupied? He couldn't help but ask. LV Tianguang counted with his fingers. About 2 months. Since 2 months ago, when our plans started to be implemented, the battle has been going on until now. It's killing me. If it doesn't end now, I plan to drag the heavenly light world down with me and perish together with them. Hui silently turned his head. This meant that this energy node had been occupied for 2 months. The abyss death fog had accumulated energy here for 2 months. Haha, it was a miracle that the heavenly light world was not destroyed. LV Tianguang used all his strength to touch this dark star. Even though it had turned into a century egg and was no longer the egg that he originally knew and was emitting a rotten stench that had been left aside for tens of millions of years, it was still the egg that he had pinched with his own hands. He didn't know what he was thinking anymore. In short, he was trying his best to sense the dark star below. After a while, he came to a conclusion. It has not been completely transformed. It can still be saved. Nonsense, if it has been completely transformed. Do you still need your heavenly light world? Hui spat in his face. LV Tianguang smiled bitterly and continued. The core of the energy node is still there. As long as we remove the corrupted part, there will be no problem. So, hurry up and give me a solution. Otherwise, I will purify it. Hui hurriedly rolled up his sleeves. Don't. LV Tianguang turned pale with fright. After being purified by him, the heavenly light world might be finished. We can slowly drain its energy and then direct it in that direction. Hui followed his finger and looked at the chaos origin. He said seriously, "Are you sure that this won't kill anyone?" "I don't know." LV Tianguang shook his head honestly. But this is the only way. For the time being, all right. Then let's do it this way. Hui flung his clothes, and the guardian's shield and giant sword that were hanging on his hands disappeared. A slender god staff appeared in front of him and was grabbed by him. He forcefully tapped the god staff on the space in front of him. A huge golden rune appeared out of thin air. It might be about the size of the sun below. Purify it for me. Hui pressed the god staff down with a holy expression. The sacred rune suddenly smashed towards the dark star. Wah! LV Tianguang and the rest only had time to let out a tragic cry before their vision was blocked by the clash between the golden and black light. LV Tianguang only felt that he had 1 foot in the cycle of reincarnation. He decided that he would never talk to people from the god world in this lifetime. The one who got rid of Void was a lunatic. The one in front of him was a lunatic. Chapter 1194. Many years later, perhaps many years later, Yin Nuoxing had never heard of the heavenly light world in the future. Perhaps it was because they had not survived the disaster at the end of the era. However, it was still far away from that time. In the future, most of the warriors who had survived the turmoil and calamity in the heavenly light world had retired. Perhaps they were tired of everything after that battle and only wanted to live the rest of their lives peacefully. Another portion was still fighting in the void and resisting the abyssal death fog. Some people had gone very far and had reached a very high level in their lifetime. No matter which one it was, they would occasionally stop what they were doing and could not help but recall that battle, that scene that was hailed as a legend. The golden sun and colorful energy radiance shone on every corner of the heavenly light world. The entire world was immersed in light. The colorful radiance that was constantly expanded without limit, bringing with it a power that could engulf everything in the world. Around the colorful radiance, the void turned into nothingness and everything turned into ashes. It was as if the 8 elements world was collapsing towards this light from the inside. The golden sun that was dancing at the side released an extremely holy radiance, as if it was foretelling the rebirth of this world. Destruction and rebirth happened at the same time. The colorful radiance engulfed all the abyssal death fog, and the heavenly light world that was already riddled with holes stabilized under the illumination of the holy radiance. Everything returned to balance. In the end, without any warning, the colorful radiance disappeared. It was as if the world had been created and exploded outside the heavenly light world, becoming a salute to celebrate the end of everything and the rebirth of this world. Everything had come to an end. To this war, yes, it had already ended. However, the war that was so long that it was almost eternal was still ongoing outside. However, that was a different topic. Yin Nuoxing and Hui did not know how the people of the heavenly light world felt. One of them was responsible for blocking the door, while the other was responsible for purification. Hui performed exceptionally well and purified the energy node into the core of the purification domain, completely dispelling the abyssal death fog, the manifestations, and the faint haze in the heavenly light world. After that, Yin Nuoxing blasted the abyss death fog that was still watching from the outside into nothingness. The two of them carried the repaired heaven light world and escaped, sending it to the upper planes. After the war ended, the heavenly light world seemed to have held an unprecedented carnival. Perhaps it was also to dilute the sadness left behind by the war. In any case, the two of them did not participate. They hurriedly bid farewell to LV Tianguang and left. However, before they left, they still gave him a small blessing. Even though the war was far from over and the enemies entrenched in the depths of the void were still mercilessly wreaking havoc, to the people of the heavenly light world, this was already a victory. They had a reason and a need to hold a carnival that was appropriate for them. Then, they would return to the right path at an appropriate time. Those who were fighting would continue fighting, and those who were farming would continue farming. The truth of the world was that all developments would return to the ordinary daily life. All extraordinary and unusual things were nothing more than waves in the great river, and everything would return to peace in the end. Although the waves caused by the abyss death fog were a little too big, to the extent that the mountains, rivers, and seas became a monstrous flood that drowned the world. Those more troublesome things were things that they would have to think about in the future, at least for now. Then what should they do now? It had been almost 4 hours since they followed the big guy out, and all around them was the dark void and innumerable world luminous clusters. This place had yet to be affected by the abyssal death mist, at least not for the time being, which was a cause for celebration. However, there would always be a time when it would be destroyed, just like the void they had just passed. It was a middle plane, filled with corpses that had been melted and disintegrated by the void, as well as innumerable broken world luminous clusters. Innumerable substances and rules were filling the endless void without stirring a single ripple. The abyss death fog had already spread to the middle plane, but their progress was not a perfect circle. There would be strong resistance in some places. For example, the heaven light world resisted the abyss death fog for 2 months until all the worlds around it were destroyed. If the two of them did not go, the heaven light world would have been destroyed in the abyss death fog sooner or later. Fortunately, they made it in time. Phone, when will that big guy stop? Huey's soft voice pulled Yin out of the state of wild thoughts. He raised his eyes slightly and looked at the Supreme Sua, who was slowly walking forward in the void. He also felt a little confused. This was the depths of the void, a very, very deep place. If the area of the upper plane, middle plane, and lower plane was a large concentric circle, the upper plane was the circle, and the other 2 planes were the belts around the upper plane. If the void was such a layout, of course, it was more complicated in reality. Let's just treat it as such for now. They should have now bypassed the upper plane in the middle, which was the important gathering place of the 8 elements world in the void. They came to the middle plane on the other side. There was a group of worlds that had not been destroyed. The abyss death fog had not reached here yet. Around them were colorful world light balls, just like the stars in the galaxy. Very few of them could feel what was happening in the void. They would only wake up when death came, and then fall into death, just like the price of awakening. Who knows where he's going? Yin Nuoxing yawned lazily and held the back of his head with his hands. The 2 of them followed closely behind the Supreme Being for 100 miles, neither close nor far. He did not seem to notice them, or he did not want to pay attention to them. After the abyss death fog in the heaven light world was cleared, and the countless abyss death fog outside were blown up by Yun Nuoxing using the power of the heavenly god of origin, Suya, the Supreme Being, left the heaven light world and walked to the other side of the void. The 2 of them could not figure out what he was thinking and what he wanted to do. His body was still surrounded by the extremely dense abyss death fog, which had been completely assimilated. Until now, they still could not figure out whether he was dead or alive. Previously, they had subconsciously treated him as a dead person because the 2 of them felt that he should have died long ago after being transformed into such a state by the abyss death fog. His aura permeated the void, and the aura of the peak of the origin was constantly changing the void. He seemed to be doing something, but they could not see the trajectory. The vast void was also blocked by countless numbers. Even if he passed by many world-like clusters, no one could sense all of this. Only the 2 spectators in the void were looking at him, watching him walk away step by step, not knowing where he was going. We looked at the Supreme Being in the distance thoughtfully. His gaze inadvertently swept past the feet of the Supreme Being several times, and then glanced at the void around him. These movements were somewhat weak, and he did not deliberately hide them, so they were noticed by Yun Nuoxing. However, the latter did not ask anything. She could not find anything to ask, so there was nothing to talk about. The void was dead silent. The Supreme Being walked in front, and the 2 of them followed behind him. Yun Nuoxing stretched her back and lazily said, "There are still things to do. I still haven't taken care of Suya in the void. If I don't pick him up, I'm afraid that he will really be melted in the void." We glanced at her, then at the Supreme Being. Sensing the fluctuations of the void around him, he couldn't help but frown. "I'm actually more concerned about this Supreme Being's movements. Suya won't disappear for a while. They have already survived the initial calamity and the calamity that has lasted for countless years. This time, to them, it can't even be considered as an upheaval, so it won't affect them much. But I'm a bit uneasy. Let's observe a bit more. What did you think? Yin Nuashing turned her head to look at his thoughtful expression and asked. Hui rubbed his chin and pondered for a while. Then, he shook his head and said, It's hard to say. It might not be what I think. Let's observe for a while. If it's really what I think, I'm afraid I'll think of more things. To avoid burning my brain, it's better not to think too much. Yin Nuashing scratched her head and looked puzzled. What did you start to speak halfway? I learned it from you. Hui said matter-of-factly. Yin Nuashing. She glanced at him but did not say anything. There were countless things in the void, and it was impossible for him to have come into contact with all of them. It was very normal for him to see strange things. However, this little fluctuation made him feel uneasy. His heart actually started to beat faster. He was actually a little nervous, and even he himself was a little scared. It had been many years since he had felt this kind of feeling of looking forward to something, but not daring to imagine it. What was he looking forward to? He did not know. He did not know at all. It was a reaction that originated from his body. He was naturally looking forward to something, waiting for something to appear in front of him. He was also a little scared. A weak energy fluctuation swept across the void. It was a very normal energy fluctuation and not the death mist of the abyss. The Most High walked left and right. Sometimes he would go around a certain place once or twice. He seemed to be walking casually in the void, but in fact, Yin Nuashing could not see anything special about it. He just felt that the Most High would not waste his time here. It was not easy for him to come back alive, so why not take a look at the beautiful mountains and rivers of his hometown? Stop, Hui suddenly said in a very strict tone. Yin Nuashing subconsciously stopped and turned his head, only to find that the former was staring at the Most High. The voice of the rules spread out, letting him know that this sentence was directed at the Most High in the distance. If you continue walking, there will be no turning back. This void will disappear with your movements. No one can go there, not even to take a look. That is an untouchable, forbidden land. Stop now, before everything goes out of control. Hui warned in a serious tone. Yin Nuashing glanced at him and played along. Stop. Even if we go there, only death awaits us. Even if you go there in this state, you will not survive. It is not too late to go back now. Although his words were very righteous, he had no idea where the Most High was going and did not know where he was talking about. The Most High turned a deaf ear to their words. He continued to walk in the void step by step, slowly and unhurriedly, as if he had lost his soul. Yin Nuashing shrugged. Pretend you didn't hear anything. Hui sighed. His expression suddenly became very serious, so serious that he seemed to be planning to do something. At this moment, the Most High suddenly stopped. He really stopped. It was not that their eyes were playing tricks on them, but they were both stunned. This guy actually stopped? It doesn't matter. Anyway, I won't be able to survive today. In this final moment, I just want to see the place that I have been pursuing all my life, the place that I could not see until I finally fell. This was the first time he had spoken, showing a rather high level of rationality. Yin Nuashing and Hui were both stunned. During the battle just now, this guy was extremely violent and did not have the slightest bit of rationality. Now, he actually came back to his senses. His huge body, standing in the void, slowly shrank as he continued to walk forward. In the end, he returned to a heroic figure with black hair like a waterfall. His body was still surrounded by the abyssal death mist, but his eyes were shining with the light of divinity. It was a pair of eyes that had seen through the world. He still retained his rationality. I had already died many years ago. I never thought that the abyssal death mist would transform me and bring me back to life. I had become neither human nor ghost. The Most High looked down at his own hand as the path beneath his feet continued. Thank you, heavenly deities of the divine realm. You have awakened the last bit of power that I left on SUA. That power is currently cleaning up the remaining abyssal death fog on SUA. The void is an excellent graveyard, most suitable for burying them. Yin Nuashing and Hui looked at each other and immediately thought of the scepter's consciousness. Hui immediately understood. Hui took a step forward. It's nothing. We are very interested in that world, cough. Do you really want to do this? I have to do this. That is my long-cherished wish. The arrival of the abyssal death mist and the underworld has destroyed everything. There is no more hope, at least before my soul is torn to shreds. I want to see the shadow of the thing that I have been pursuing all my life. The Most High shook his head. You can reincarnate and come back in your next life. Why do you have to bet on the next life so easily? Yin Nuashing crossed her arms and said softly. The Most High shook his head lightly and sighed. Next life? What next life is there to talk about? Those who were tainted by the abyssal death mist and died from it have all gone to the underworld to reincarnate. But I, who was killed by the underworld, have completely lost the right to reincarnate. There will no longer be a place for me in this world in the future. Yin Nuashing narrowed her eyes. As expected, he was killed by the underworld, and his soul was completely destroyed by a forbidden technique. In terms of laws and order, he was completely destroyed. He had no next life to speak of. At this moment, what was left in his body was only a mixture of a huge amount of divinity and consciousness. What happened back then? We knew that he could not stop it, so he changed the topic. Nothing special. The Most High shrugged and smiled. They attacked and used the abyssal death mist as a passage to descend. At first, it was only the heavenly god-tier beings that came. Later, it was the heavenly god of origin. I fought my way through the abyssal death mist to their territory and saw everything. Then, I was killed by an even more powerful underworld being, and my soul was destroyed. Before I died, I threw part of the information into the void. I don't know if anyone could find out about it. The corner of Yin Nuashing's eyes twitched. So, it was this ruthless person who killed his way into the underworld, and he was the one who spread the information. It was a pity that no one seemed to know about it in the end. It was only after dozens of eras that Azurite found out about it and told it to him. However, it did not matter if they knew about it or not. At most, they would know who they were fighting. The underworld's power was very strong, beyond their imagination. There was no way they could fight against it. Did you see it clearly? Is that really the underworld? We asked cautiously. It's the same as the legends. There's no problem. The Most High nodded vigorously. There are heavenly gods of that level. The Most High was silent for a few seconds. Then, he nodded and said, yes, and there's more than one. We was horrified. What Yin Nuashing had told him was true. It wasn't that he didn't believe him, but he didn't want to believe it. He didn't want to face reality, because if this matter was true, they wouldn't have any power to fight back. So he had been praying and running away. Now, there was a witness who had been there and then came back to tell him this matter, which had completely confirmed this matter. All of this couldn't be avoided, all of this resistance. Perhaps it was meaningless. Yin Nuashing patted Huey's shoulder. When he saw Huey's shaky expression, he knew that the Guardian had thought of many things in a short time. He could not help but sigh. To be honest, he also felt a little discouraged. Heavenly God of the primeval beginning. These 4 words were like a river of stars pressing down on the world. There was no heavenly God of this level in the immortal world, nor in the 8 elements realm. Under the pressure brought by these 4 words, it seemed that there was no way to save them. It was fine if there was, but there was more than one. There was no way to fight on the same stage. This was a one-sided crushing. It was an absolute deadlock. There was no way to solve it. Did you go there to seek hope? Or, we looked at the Most High. Hope? The Most High sneered and shook his head. There is no hope. No matter what you do, it is like a mayfly trying to shake a tree. The more you struggle, the more you can live. But what's the use? I am more desperate than you. When I knew that there was a heavenly God of this level in the underworld, when I plunged into the underworld's headquarters, I knew that everything was over. In the end, I still ended up like this. He spread his hands and shrugged. He was silent for a while, and then he continued to walk forward. I just want to take a look. There's nothing there. There's no hope there. There's only even greater despair. There's an even deeper and darker despair hidden there. I just wanted to take a look. That's all. He adjusted his state to the peak state that he had never been able to reach before. His aura was extremely frightening, even stronger than Yin Nuashing and Hui at this moment. His eyes were bursting with the light of energy. They were all familiar with this state. This was a means to strengthen oneself to the extreme. It was the last fight to destroy jade and common stone. Fight with everything, gamble with everything. An item floated out from his body. It was a fragment of a piece of some artifact. It was only the size of a palm. The aura of time flowed endlessly. It was like the aura of the sea of time. It penetrated the sea of time of the Yuan realm. From it, one could even feel the aura of time that exceeded the total time of the Yuan realm by dozens of times. The key, we exclaimed. No wonder you dare to go there. We are here to help you. Whether you succeed or fail, we will leave it to fate. Phone, come help me. We shouted loudly. His aura was also raised to the limit. Only Yin Nuoxing was dumbfounded. She had no idea what the two of them were doing. However, when she heard his voice, she quickly responded. She slowly stretched out her right hand. Huge, overlapping, and layered formations appeared out of thin air in the void. Endless power of the void was extracted and poured into the formations. This part of the void collapsed. There was even a land of nothingness in the distance. The Most High nodded heavily. His hands slowly formed a seal. The fragment that seemed to carry the aura of the entire sea of time rotated and landed in front of him. As it buzzed softly, the void collapsed. It was as if there were movements of creation and destruction bursting forth. Energy spontaneously condensed, just like the scene of the creation of heaven and earth. Boom! There was no excessive narration or description. The three of them launched their strongest attacks at the same time, striking the fragment into the void that was meticulously arranged. A strange scene of the creation of heaven and earth burst forth before their eyes. It was as if there were the birth and destruction of the heavens in myriad realms like the rising and falling tides. The void flickered incessantly. Bang! Endless energy storms squeezed out from every corner of the void. They squeezed out from the cracks in the void, revealing a vertical crack that was about 1,000,000 miles wide. It was not a passageway, nor was it a teleportation place. It was just a crack in a corner. It carried perhaps the most terrifying thing in this world. When Yin Nuoxing saw it, her eyes widened. In the next second, she was hit by a terrifying void impact. She let out a muffled groan, and the three of them were sent flying. With a hurried glance, she saw the thing in the crack, a vast and endless energy storm, as well as that crack in the void. That vertical crack was not pierced by the three of them. It was just a scene that appeared when they used a key to open something. That was what they saw after opening the door, a crack in the void that had been formed a long, long time ago. There was also a never-ending energy storm. Endless energy radiance burst forth from the big crack in the void. It was like a fountain of energy. There were countless energy auras, endless divinity that was so powerful that it made them feel suffocated. That kind of law, that kind of violence, there were many other things mixed within. However, they cannot be seen in detail. Just a breeze that blew out from the crack in the void almost injured the three strongest people of this era. That is my burial ground, the Most High said softly. The abyssal death fog on his body was almost completely eliminated. It was almost completely purified by the breeze just now. At this moment, his life was connected with the abyssal death fog. If the latter disappeared, his life that was lingering on at death's door would also completely come to an end. Yin Nuoxing swallowed his saliva and stared at the big crack in the void in the distance. He knew what it was. Before he went to the Suya continent, he had inadvertently talked with Hui and the others. Just a few short sentences buried in the depths of the distant void, there was an eternal and indestructible divine destruction storm. That was the place where the first great deity fell. Chapter 1195. That is where I will be buried, the place that I have been pursuing all my life. But in the end, I have only found a grave for myself. So beautiful, so dazzling. The endless storm of divinity is the place where this world will never die, the scar of eternal destruction, the wound of the great Yuan realm, the last trace left behind by the origin great deities. Yin Nuashing looked at the large crack in the void in the distance. The crack was not fixed, and it was just exposed in front of him. However, no matter how he looked at it, it was a huge crack. Many small cracks the size of planets spread out around the wide crack, and the inside of the crack was covered in light. It looked like a storm, like a hurricane, but it was not foggy. He could see the traces of the flow of energy rushing from left to right. The weak wind of energy that accidentally leaked out from the crack turned a huge area of the void into nothingness. Just that gust of wind alone contained an indescribable energy that could kill the three of them countless times. The storm contained many kinds of energy, hundreds or even thousands of auras. Yin Nuashing could not distinguish those energies in detail. At first, they must have been separated from each other, or even hostile to each other. However, after countless years of evolution, they had all fused together, and he could still tell that there were faint changes in them. He tried to analyze any of the energy auras, and just this thought made the alarm in his heart ring wildly. After hesitating for a long time, he still did not try that suicidal action. The place where the origin great deities fought. To put it bluntly, it was the place where they had fallen. At least, that was what Yin Nuashing thought. If it was not the place where they had fallen, how could the existences that protected the great Yuan realm allow such a scale of battle to remain here? Is this the place where that scene was born? Yin Nuashing murmured in his heart. He had seen that scene before, the eye of the ocean that had transformed into a human. He had seen that scene from its memories. That scene of the creation of the world, perhaps it had torn the world of light where the realm of the gods was located into pieces at that time, and the excess energy had left behind this big crack that pierced through the void. There was no mistaking it. The power of laws and chaotic energy were not something that the heavenly origin god could possess. The truth was that the heavenly origin god was the origin god, and coupled with that unprecedented divinity. Yes, this was definitely the last trace that they had left behind. The endless divine light dissipated, and the energy of their explosive attack was exhausted. The aftershock spread far and wide in the void before quietly disappearing. The void returned to its deathly stillness once again, leaving only the huge crack that pierced through the void and the endless storm that swept through it. One could vaguely hear the sound of the wind in their ears. They seemed to be standing in front of the crack, listening to the sound of the eternal storm blowing past their ears, listening to the news mixed in the sound of the wind, as if it was telling them something. What are you talking about? It was impossible to hear it clearly. In fact, no one was speaking. It was just a hallucination. They mistakenly thought that the wind of rules was someone's whisper. The Most High being walked into the energy storm, but it didn't cause any ripples. The storm didn't stop, and it wouldn't stop. His figure was instantly submerged, and only the black fragment was left floating beside Yin Nuashing. A bleak life. After a long time, he let out a long sigh and crossed his arms. I thought that it would be rare to have someone to gossip with. The eternal brilliance is just a gorgeous firework in the end. It will be difficult for anyone to see it in the future, and it will disappear in the endless sea of time. Yin Nuashing turned his head. He didn't know what happened to the Most High Being. Other than the key, there was nothing left. The outcome might not be too important. Walking into that place, what other consequences could there be other than death? Eternal loneliness. Yin Nuashing's eyes dimmed slightly. He looked at the huge crack in the void that was slowly closing. He felt a wave of sadness in his heart. Who was he sad for? Who was he hurting? He did not know. Perhaps it was for himself, or perhaps it was for others, but in the end, he calmed down completely. Looking at the history of the great origin realm, countless generations of people, some of them had a stunning life, some of them had a tragic life. In the end, the only outcome was to become an ice-cold character in eternal loneliness, recorded by others and kept in the memories of others. At the end of time, no one could escape the fate of being forgotten. Foam, don't sigh anymore. We patted him on the shoulder and tilted his head to look at the void. The big crack was completely closed, and the void returned to silence. That God's destruction storm was once again buried in the void. No one would see it, and no one would remember it. The Most High Being had already perished many years ago. The gorgeous fireworks that belonged to him had already bloomed. At this moment, there was no longer any sound of him. We still have to deal with the matter of Sua. Yin Nuashing nodded. Now was indeed not the time to think about this. There was still a lot of mess to deal with. For example, the continent that had been thrown into the void. Perhaps we also wanted to clean up the remaining abyss death fog and the large number of manifestations on the Sua continent. He didn't care. He just needed to do something. Send the Sua continent back to its original place, or bring it back. Yin Nuashing was stunned by his words. He only reacted after a while. The Sua continent had been thrown into the void, far away from the world light that was used as the core of control. Let's go there first. Yin Nuashing shook his head. This was an unexpected situation. I didn't think that the entire continent would be thrown out. Hui nodded. Yin Nuashing slowly opened the portal. Both of them secretly glanced at the place where the huge crack in the void had disappeared. Their emotions were somewhat complicated. This was also the first time they had seen that place. It would be a lie if they said they weren't curious. However, they couldn't just let go of everything and rush into that place like the Most High Being. That was a dead end. No one could withstand the god's destruction storm there. The peak heavenly gods of origin were so insignificant that they were not even ants in front of that power. That was the power left behind by the heavenly gods of origin. Let's go. Yin Nuashing spoke softly and pulled Huey's attention back. He nodded and turned to walk into the former's portal. Yin Nuashing turned his head and stopped in his tracks. He looked at the empty void with a faint expression of pain on his face. Something in his head was touching his nerves. However, it quickly disappeared. It only took about 5 seconds for the pain to disappear completely. There was no lingering pain. What the hell? Yin Nuashing held his head and shook it. His eyes were still staring at the empty void. He couldn't help but frown. It didn't seem like he was reacting to the huge crack. It seemed like he suddenly had a headache. He turned his head and walked into the portal, disappearing into the void. A second later, he emerged from the portal again. Not far from him, the black fragment was floating and spinning in the void. It didn't have the protection of the rule domain, but it wasn't broken down by the void. I'm thinking, why does this key look so familiar? Yin Nuashing looked at the fragment suspiciously. He furrowed his brows and searched desperately in his mind. After a while, after going through more than 10 years of memories, he finally dug out a memory from a corner. He suddenly broke out in a cold sweat. That black thing seemed to have been gathering dust in his pendant for a long time. He didn't even look at it much. He only noticed it when he was fiddling with the pendant. He stared blankly at the key and subconsciously reached out to take it. It was cold to the touch, as if he was holding a piece of ice that wouldn't melt for 10,000 years. It was cold, but he didn't feel the pain that was gradually getting colder. Am I walking on the path of backtracking? Or are the incidents an inevitable process that I cannot shake off? Yin Nuashing lowered his head and looked at the fragment in his palm. His gaze was a little dazed. He originally thought that there would be some deviations in this dream because of his later personality, but the final result wouldn't change. What was supposed to happen would still happen. So, was Feng Ling going to come here in the past? Or was him getting the fragment key something inevitable? If it was the former, it would be understandable. But if it was the latter, then he felt a little creeped out. It was as if everything he did was fated. No matter if it was him or Feng Ling, they would get this key at this moment. There was a mysterious force that led him here. *T. Feng, what are you waiting for? It's time to leave. Huey's voice came from the teleportation door behind him. Yin Nuashing responded vaguely and put the key into the pendant. Before he completely left, he couldn't help but take a few more glances. His eyelids drooped slightly, and after a moment, he left without looking back. The teleportation door also slowly closed as he entered. The void returned to its calm state. It was still dark, and no one knew what had happened here. When they returned to the Suja continent and saw this continent again, they originally thought that they would see the flames of war soaring into the sky, or the flames of war burning the plains, the ground covered in black smoke the endless abyss death fog emerging from the void surrounding this world, and countless manifestations surrounding this continent like an iron can. They thought that they would see such a scene, but in reality, the warriors of Suja were wearing heavy armor, and their bodies were stained with black blood. There were a few columns of black dust rising into the sky from the ground. That was the scene of the abyss death fog's power being released into the void. At this moment, there was a holy aura that they were slightly familiar with floating in the Suja continent. That was the last power left behind by the Supreme Being. Under the guidance of the Scepter's consciousness, it led the warriors of Suja continent to defeat the last enemy. Why do I feel like we're late? We looked at the people below who were cleaning up the battlefield after the battle with a dumbfounded expression. Did he not rush back in a hurry to help? Great. They made it in time to wrap things up. The climax had already ended, and they did not even have the time to see the ending of the grand finale. Yin Nuoxing flicked her long hair and said, "Isn't it pretty good? The children who belong to this world have dealt with the disaster of their own world. It's better than fantasizing about someone coming to save them." "That's true," Hui mumbled as he nodded. "But I still feel that something is not right. You guys, we were so busy releasing that scepter, waking up the Most High, and going out with him to cause a ruckus. Now, we're rushing back to save the day, and you're telling me that the matter has been resolved? I keep feeling a little too busy, and then I feel uncomfortable all over. You're not being surrounded like stars, so you feel uncomfortable." Yin Nuoxing joked. "No." Hui rolled his eyes and crossed his arms. "I just feel that. Hey, Hui, look below." Yin Nuoxing lowered her head. The light emitted from the barrier of order from SUA illuminated the entire sky. They stood in the largest battlefield of the continent that had just ended. There were still many warriors below who had not retreated in time. The light from the barrier cast their shadows on the ground. After some time, they were finally noticed by the people who were cleaning up the battlefield below. Then, the warriors of SUA put down what they were doing and gave them a strange salute. Their expressions were solemn and uniform, so it should not be a curse. Are they worshipping? Hui scratched his head. He could feel the gratitude from the people below, which made him a little puzzled. They did not do anything. How did they receive such a big salute from countless people for no reason? That's the SUA people's thank you salute. A chuckle came from beside them. Yin Nuoxing and Hui turned their heads and saw a shadow-like guy holding a scepter in the sky, walking towards them. Naturally, it was the scepter's consciousness. "Salute to you, celestial gods of the divine realm. The Supreme has told me everything." The scepter's consciousness stood a few meters in front of them and said after a slight pause, "Have you returned to normal?" Yin Nuoxing glanced at him and said, "Yes and no." The scepter's consciousness shook its head. "Only my consciousness is left in this body. It is the last power left by the Supreme. Soon, my power will be exhausted, and I will fall asleep again. Maybe I won't have the chance to wake up again. Maybe I will wake up again when the Suja continent is in danger. But it doesn't matter. The crisis has been resolved. It doesn't matter if this power is left or not." We looked at the people below and could not help but say, "You just said that it was a thank you salute. What does that have to do with us? We haven't had time to do anything." Hearing that, the scepter's consciousness chuckled and shook his head. "First of all, you have awakened me and activated the last power left by the Supreme. Secondly, I have borrowed your power." "Us?" Yin Nuoxing was stunned for a moment. The scepter's consciousness nodded and said, "The power you used to fight in the forest was branded in heaven and earth by the distorted rules there. That is one of the powers of the Supreme. 40% of your power has been engraved and borrowed by us. The power of a peak Empyrean god of origin. Even 40% is enough to clean up the little after effects left in this world." As he said that, he paused for a moment and said awkwardly, "It is also because of your power that your images have been manifested and remembered by the people of SUA." Huey's cheeks twitched. "This won't have any effect, right?" The scepter's consciousness thought seriously for a moment and said with uncertainty, "Who knows? Maybe they will build a statue for you too or something." Yin Nuoxing and Hui were speechless. Yin Nuoxing felt awkward for a moment and suddenly looked at the continent of SUA. It is very difficult to completely remove the death shroud of the abyss with this level of cleansing. If it is rooted in your conceptual layer of rules, this level of cleansing will not be enough. Hearing that, the scepter's consciousness's expression became serious. He made a gesture of taking a deep breath and seemed a little nervous. Then what should I do? My remaining power is not enough for a large-scale cleansing of the rules. Yin Nuoshing was silent for a moment. He looked down at the people of Sua who were returning to the right path and cleaning up the battlefield. Some of them even sneakily looked up and gave him a look of worship or awe. He felt a little creeped out and goosebumps appeared all over his body. The main thing is that I did not do anything. It feels very wrong to be remembered like that. I am afraid that I will wake up awkwardly in the middle of the night with nightmares. It is not that I did nothing, you guys. Yin Nuoshing shook his head. It doesn't matter. Just take it that I did something unnecessary. It is rare for me to find a reason to feel at ease. Don't stop me. Yes. This guy is usually very lazy. It is rare for him to move around. Don't try to persuade him. Hui smiled cheekily and said as he put his arm around Yin Nuoshing's shoulder. The scepter's consciousness was silent for a moment and nodded. Then I thanked the two gods first. The people of Sua will always remember your kindness. Yin Nuoshing felt even more awkward when he heard that. He only felt uncomfortable all over. Why would the world remember him for no reason? Anyway, this matter was settled. They all thought that it was just a small matter. They never thought that many years later, there would be two faiths on the Sua continent. This was something that no one expected, including the clumsy guardian and the observer. After agreeing to help, Yin Nuoshing started. He used the Netherworld Ruin sword to cut open a crack in the sky. The dark crack seemed to lead to the void, and there was some light surging in it. He opened the crack to a size that could allow 2 or 3 people to enter. Then he waved at the 2 and flew in first. Hui and the scepter's consciousness followed closely behind. Well, to be honest, I really don't want to come to this place again. Before he started, Yin Nuoshing had goosebumps all over his body. It was as if there was a prehistoric beast staring at him in the dark. What's wrong? Hui looked at him and asked curiously. There are many strange things in the conceptual layer of the rules. Its shape can change at will. There is everything here, and there is nothing here. It all depends on one's thoughts. Yin Nuoshing's cheeks twitched slightly. He couldn't help but think of that day. So, if you see something that is unchanged in the conceptual layer of the rules, it is most likely a ghost that lives in this place. Even if the gods see it, they will stay as far away as possible. Is it that exaggerated? Hui scratched his head. He knew about this layer, but it was his first time here. I used to think that it was exaggerated. Yin Nuoshing sighed and said faintly, until one day, I was chased as far as the void. Only then did I know that it was not an exaggeration, but a statement. He lied. When he saw that thing, he didn't have time to run or dodge. He turned around and pounced on it. That's right, it was the sin of the world. At that time, he followed the conceptual layer of the rules of the realm of the gods all the way to the conceptual layer of the void. The distribution of the conceptual layers of the rules was just like the world-like clusters in the void and the void. The world-like clusters were independent of each other, but they were all connected to the void. Therefore, he could follow the conceptual layer to the conceptual layer of the void, and what he saw there was the rules of the entire 8 elements realm. Then he bumped into that thing, the thing that had haunted him for his entire life. He could no longer escape and became its prison forever. His body and soul were a cage, imprisoning the most dangerous and terrifying thing in the entire Yuan realm. It was the sin of the world in the entire Yuan realm. It was so heavy that even the primeval god could not breathe. Once bitten, twice shy, what he was afraid of was the place in this world that left him with lingering fear. It was the concept level of the laws. Even though he already knew that the universal sin of the great primordial realm was on him, he was still worried that he would see something in this place. It had already become a nightmare that he could not get rid of. Chapter 1196. The action of the rule cleansing was much smaller than what the scepter's consciousness had imagined. It thought that it would make a big movement in this dim, conceptual layer of the rules. In fact, Yin Nuashing just waved her hand lightly, and a circle of colorful energy slowly spread to the distance and finally integrated into this space, and then there was no more movement. If one's line of sight followed the energy ring, they would be able to see that it was rushing towards a faraway place in one direction. Along the way, when it passed by some places, it was like a gentle breeze brushing past the ground, raising dust. However, what was raised by the colorful energy ring were wisps of black smoke, sticking to the corners of this space and ready to move. It was completely impossible to distinguish with the naked eye unless they could be pulled out from the depths of space, just like what Yin Nuo used. Watching the energy ring go to the depths of this layer, Yin Nuashing clapped her hands and said, "It's done. That's it." The scepter's consciousness was dumbfounded. To be honest, it did not understand anything. Yes, Yin Nuashing nodded. Seeing the scepter's dumbfounded look, she pondered for a moment and said, "If you are still not assured, I know this world has been infected by the abyssal death mist for too long. If it were me, I would not easily believe that the dark forces that have occupied this world for countless years have been cleansed so easily." No, the scepter's consciousness shook its head stiffly. Before it could say a word, Yin Nuashing said, "I'll leave one more thing, but it's just a backup plan. At most, it will have the effect of warning and blocking. If they really come back one day, just like this time in the past, you'll have to fight against them by yourselves. It's impossible for someone to come and save you every time." The scepter's consciousness nodded. It naturally understood the reason behind it. We are in the conceptual layer of the rules. We looked at the depths of this space. At the limit of his vision, he could no longer see the energy ring. He waved his hand at Yin Nuashing and said, "Won't it affect the SUA continent if we do anything here?" "It won't affect anything." Yin Nuashing shook her head. The concept stratum of precepts is the stratum of precepts in layman terms, the bottom of the sea of precepts. Any major movement here would certainly cause some changes to the deeper environment of this world, but it would be very weak and negligible. SUA's highest tier is merely a heavenly God-tier life form, and apart from it, no one else would be able to sense anything. Furthermore, I did not do anything major, merely using a bit of energy to sweep across the concept stratum and uproot the deep-rooted abyssal death shroud. I did not deliberately change or disturb anything. No, if I must say, there will be some weak changes. Very weak, but still, it will not affect anything. Perhaps on a sunny day, someone will accidentally see the space vibrate, and it will pass by like an illusion. That's the extent of the turbulence, and it will only be this weak for 3 days. Both the scepter's consciousness and Hui nodded. If it was only this level, it could indeed be ignored. After that, Yin Nuashing and Hui were not in a hurry to leave. They stayed on the Suya continent for some time. The two of them negotiated with the scepter's consciousness for a period of time and threw the Suya continent into a newly stabilized world of light in the depths of the void. The barrier was then put away by the latter. The past few days were calm. There was no abyss fog, no war. The people of Suya were still cleaning up the huge battlefield. When they saw Yin Nuashing and Hui walking by at a low altitude, they would stop and give gifts of worship. It made the two of them uncomfortable, and then they turned to wander in the clouds. Although with the unintentional help of the two of them, the battle that had lasted for countless years ended in victory in a short period of time. However, the world had been devastated for countless years. As the source of the last battle, the Land of Hope had suffered the most damage. In addition to the traces of destruction left by the two of them, there was a large area of land that was destroyed by more energy. Those were the traces left by the warriors of Suya. 80 to 90% of the land had been hollowed out. The forest that once existed in the surrounding area had disappeared. The closer to the center, the more serious the damage was. Looking down from the sky, the original place of the Land of Hope looked like a big hole that had been hollowed out. The cracks in the earth spread out in all directions with that place as the center. The nearest city was on the path of the cracks, and there was still some distance before it would be affected. The people in that city had already begun to move, and perhaps they would retreat far away. Other places had been suffering from countless small-scale disturbances. They were not as tragic as the Land of Hope, so the situation in those places was better. In general, except for the place where the Land of Hope was originally located, which looked like it had been bombarded by a meteorite, the other places could be said to be safe. There were only a few traces of battle. After the traces left by the abyssal death mist were completely cleaned up, the energy of the world had also returned to the right track. The normal energy cycle, the energy wandering between heaven and earth, was also normal. At least, Yin Nuashing did not feel the aura that made him feel abnormal. Except for the Land of Hope, there was a lot of rotten and disgusting smell there. The burned corpses of the Suyao warriors, the distortion left behind after the abyssal death mist dissipated. There was no way to save these. In the depths of the Suyao continent, the deepest underground, close to the core of the planet, Yin Nuashing and Hui floated in this place where the magma was boiling. The dazzling red magma in front of them gave them an illusion. The two of them were not afraid of the temperature here and did not take any precautions. They came here to fulfill a sentence. The scepter's consciousness had exhausted its energy and fell into a deep sleep in the past few days. The two of them followed its wish and buried it in the depths of the Land of Hope, letting it guard the ruins that existed in name only. Yin Nuashing's hands were slightly closed, and there was a translucent blue energy ball the size of a foot between his hands. It was like a huge liquid ball that contained the sun. The surface was constantly rolling and twisting, like the magnificent sea at night. And in a circle around the surface, there were countless energy particles that were emitting fluorescent light, like a group of elves dancing around the sun. Yin Nuashing stood in the sea of magma with his eyes closed, and there was a faint murmur coming out of his mouth. Every time his voice came out, there were small talismans that were only the size of a little finger being born around the energy ball. A few talismans gathered into a ball and drilled into the energy ball, making the light suddenly brighten for a moment, and the size of the energy ball faintly expanded a little. It's done. Half an hour later, when the translucent energy ball was half a foot in size, Yin Nuashing snapped his fingers and showed a relieved smile. At the same time, the snapping of his fingers made the entire sea of magma tremble. Hui quickly calmed the sea of magma and rolled his eyes at this guy who didn't know how to control his strength. He turned to look at the energy ball. At this moment, it had become abnormally quiet. Its surface was round, like a calm sun, and there were 3 rings of light that were emitting a faint light that was fixed there at an acute angle. He couldn't help but praise this magical thing. That's it? Although I don't understand it. It looks very powerful. That's right. Yin Nuashing smiled. The fake world core carries the information of 1,000 world-light clusters and our energy in it. It's also made by me, so the quality is guaranteed. As long as it doesn't meet people of our level who touch it, there won't be any accidents. You can use this to monitor the entire Suja continent in case of the abyssal death mist. It's just a simple 2-step array creation, Yi Zichen said. Yin Nuashing nodded. Monitor the energy flow of the Suja continent and monitor for any abnormalities. If the abyssal death mist descends, it will set up a barrier immediately. And this time, the barrier has been added with our energy, so it will be completely sealed. The Suja continent will be completely isolated from the outside until it detects that there is no longer any abyssal death mist inside or outside. Hui was a little surprised. He took a few more glances at the fake world core and found that he still couldn't understand it. He couldn't help but shake his head. Well, I don't understand, but it feels very powerful. If all the surging energy is turned into an attack, it will probably be able to blow through this newly formed and stabilized world-light cluster. It's not an explosive. Forget it. Yin Nuashing didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He shook his head and didn't say anything more to Hui. He was too lazy to listen anyway. He held the translucent blue energy ball in his hands and slowly squatted down. He gently touched it to a solid surface in front of him. The energy ball had no physical body, so it easily passed through the solid surface and then surged into the real core and disappeared. After doing this, Yin stood up and stretched. He waved his hand and opened a teleportation gate. He waved his hand to Hui, and the two of them left the depths of the earth together. The sunlight that came from the front made the two of them feel a lot more comfortable. The place that was only red really made them dizzy. Is this all? Hui asked softly. He turned back to look at the somewhat tattered world. The war that has lasted for millions of years has just ended. There are actually many places that are distorted in this world. Faults, all kinds of faults, life, and many more. I don't know when it will recover. Repairing it will always be much harder than rebuilding it. Seeing his overflowing sympathy, Yin shook his head helplessly. He stretched out his hand and patted him on the back, saying, this is all. You have to give them some time to recover. This is their world. It's what they have to experience, not our world. It's not our place to intervene too much. Yin paused for a moment and looked into the distant void. We still have things we have to do. There are many things that we have to do. It's useless to be overflowing with sympathy. If we don't solve that big problem, the 8 elements realm won't be stable. Hui nodded silently. Of course, he knew that he had seen many things on this trip. Speaking of this trip, he said, in the end, we still haven't found any effective way to fight against the Abyss Death Fog. There were 2 reasons why the power of Suya was very effective against the Abyss Death Fog. First, the Abyss Death Fog here was actually weaker, much weaker. Second, the people of Suya were very used to this kind of power. Their existence was like antibodies. Naturally, it was not difficult for them to deal with their old opponents. It was actually understandable that they could hold on for such a long time. There's no good way to find it. Yin put his hands in his pockets and stood side by side with him. The 2 figures slowly floated up to the sky. The most effective way is to crush everything with absolute power. There's nothing else to say. When the power is strong enough to control everything in the palm of your hand, all the initiative is in the palm of your hand, then you don't have to worry about anything. Hui looked at him helplessly. It's the same the other way around. It's crushing, but it's just that we're being crushed by them. Yin damn it, there are still 2 primeval heavenly gods in the underworld. This kind of combat power is really unfair. However, the word fair is just nonsense. Headache. How do we deal with those 2 guys? No matter how hard we try, we can't deal with them. After he saw the power left behind by the first great heavenly god and the others, he understood even more clearly that compared to them, one was heaven and the other was earth. There was no such thing as fighting across an entire level. Let's slowly have a headache over these things. They won't be able to figure it out in a short period of time unless the 2 of them can break through to the primeval heavenly god realm in this period of time. Even if we think about it, we know that it's impossible. There's still a long time before the seal ends. Moreover, they haven't figured out how to break through to the primeval heavenly god realm. The 2 of them slowly left the Suya continent. Yin opened the portal and let Hui go in first. He turned around and looked at the continent behind him. He frowned as he recalled what the scepter's consciousness had told them. Gods of the divine world, you have to be careful. There's a force shrouding this war. This war that engulfs the entire 8 elements realm will become uncontrollable under the influence of this force. That's what the Most High saw, but we don't know what that force is. He only asked me to remind the gods of the divine world. That force. Yin frowned and pondered for a while. Then, he shook his head and left. After leaving the Suya continent, Yin brought Hui back to the world of light where he first saw the Suya continent. The people he brought from the divine world were still wandering around the many worlds of this world of light. Before returning to the divine world, he had to find them. Other than that, there was Feng. What are you doing in this damned place? Hui looked at the abyssal black hole that occupied his entire line of sight and hid the entire starry sky behind it. Looking at the black hole that was as black as the void, Hui felt his scalp tingle. I came to take a look and see if there's any reaction after the Suya continent disappears. Yin said. The Suya continent had been floating not far away from this abyssal black hole since the beginning. It had been maintaining the trend of falling towards it, but it had not fallen into it for a long time. He estimated that any matter, maybe not, maybe energy and matter other than those planets and the sun could fall into the abyssal black hole. Everything else would be forcefully sent back after touching that layer of barrier. At this moment, the two of them were standing in front of this layer of barrier. When they stretched out their hands to touch it, they felt a rebounding force from their hands. They could not feel the aura of the abyssal death mist. This was what made Yin Nuashing and the others the most surprised. A black hole that was emitting the aura of the abyssal death mist from the inside out actually did not have the aura of the abyssal death mist on its barrier. Could it be that other creatures of order had put it on? Thinking about the situation in this world of light carefully, it seemed to be possible. Maybe someone had put a barrier here to prevent too much energy from falling into this abyssal black hole. It was simply bullying the abyssal black hole that could not move. Do you want to go in and take a look? We turned his head to look at him and joked. I do have such an idea. Let's take a look at the core that controls this void that is constantly producing the abyssal death mist. Maybe we can study. Yin Nuashing suddenly stopped talking. He was about to force his way through the barrier. He turned around abruptly and looked into the distance behind him. His gaze pierced through the void and the endless void. He saw the middle plane very far away, but he could not see anything. The abyssal death mist blocked his vision. An indescribable and needless feeling of palpitation suddenly surged into their hearts. Yin Nuashing and Huey's expressions suddenly changed. This power, this destructive power, they could not see it, but they could feel it. Even the heavenly god of origin could feel this surge of energy across the void. It was as if the entire void was boiling. There was an unprecedentedly powerful force disturbing the void. Even the conceptual layer of the rules was trembling. Something was releasing a power that was beyond their understanding. Was it the power of the heavenly god of origin? The underworld has made a move, but we don't know where they are targeting. The heavenly god of origin's attack directly kicked off the curtain. They didn't even have time to prepare. We took a deep breath. We can't delay any longer. When we return, we have to get the God Realm to take action. If we delay any longer, we won't even be able to gather the power to resist. Yes. Yin Nuashing nodded. This time, he did not object. As he said, this was something that no one in the Eight Elements realm could escape from. No matter who it was, they would have to face it head-on. The two of them were no exception. It was just a matter of the order of appearance. After dragging on for so long, it was time for the God Realm to come to the forefront. The heavenly gods of origin in this world of light also felt the same situation. They all involuntarily stopped and looked around in confusion. They felt it, but could not find the specific direction of the abnormality. For a moment, they all hurriedly called out to the guardians in their souls. Don't be nervous. The people of the underworld have just made a move, Hui replied calmly. That's even better. If we can alert all the original life forms in the void, perhaps we won't be completely powerless. I believe that all the original life forms have sensed the energy riot. It's time. You go back first. Go to the Saint Spirit field and the Chanyuan field. Invite their representatives to discuss the matter of survival. The people of the God Realm and the ancient imperial world hurriedly responded. They quickly tore open the void and rushed in the direction of the God Realm. Foam! We breathed a sigh of relief. He turned around and called out, only to see Yin Nuashing staring at the huge abyss in a daze. We followed his gaze but did not see anything. It was as dark as the void. After a few seconds, Yin Nuashing replied, I heard you. Just say it. Can we win? There was another long silence. The light in Yin Nuashing's eyes flickered. After a minute, he said softly, bet everything. Everything in the great Yuan realm. The probability is 1 in 170 million. Is this your answer? Or is it the observer's answer? This is the observer's answer. Yin Nuashing's eyelids drooped slightly. There is no waiting for a miracle. If you want a miracle, there is no other answer except to create it yourself. In that split second, I saw a corner of the future. Maybe it won't be so bad. He was bluffing again. He didn't look at anything. The future that he knew and his memories were the future at this moment. His past memories were the future at this moment, showing him a future without people from the underworld. However, he still lost the battle in the future. He really gambled everything. He fought until the great elemental realm was exhausted. He exhausted all his energy, but he still couldn't protect anything. In the end, everything was still emptiness. Only the god realm survived. Those who had passed away might have passed away forever. Chapter 1197. We had stayed in this space for a very long time. He couldn't remember how many times he had stood up from his crouch. He looked at Yin Nuo, who was staring at the black hole, and couldn't help but scratch his head. Feng, you can go in directly, or we can go back. We've already stayed here for 3 days. The people from the Saint Spirit realm and the Chanyuan realm are waiting for us in the God realm. Yin Nuoxing moved slightly, as if a stone sculpture that had been frozen for tens of thousands of years was slowly moving. He had been in this position for the past 3 days without moving at all, which made Hui think that he had been petrified. At this moment, he slowly turned his head and looked at him, his eyelids drooping slightly. The situation in the black hole of the abyss is too complicated. I can't rashly go in. But I want to take a look. There must be a secret about the underworld inside. If I can solve the secret there, it might increase that small probability. Hui floated over in boredom. He reached out and grabbed Yin Nuoxing's long hair that reached her ankles. He swayed it back and forth in the starry sky. You've been studying here for 3 days. If it were up to me, you should just barge in and take a look. You won't be able to find anything even if you stand here for a year. It's very strange inside. I'll leave it to you when we go to the God realm. Yin Nuoxing glanced at him and said, Are you sure you can handle the affairs of the God realm by yourself? Also, it's not like I can't go in and take a look at the affairs of this world. At most, we'll meet again in 10,000 years. Hui smiled bitterly and waved his hand. Forget it, forget it. Don't do this, don't mess around. Yin Nuoxing nodded and turned back to look at the black hole. We couldn't help but sit down beside Yin Nuoxing and stare at the black hole. It really did look like the void. It was pure darkness, and there was nothing inside. Starlight constantly fell into it and disappeared. Energy also flowed into it, as if it was returning to the void, dissolving and disappearing. Really, he couldn't see anything. It was pitch black. After staring at it for so long, he had the illusion that he was in the void, surrounded by infinite darkness and the void. If you're bored, you can go back first. Yin Nuoxing couldn't help but sigh when she saw Huey's expression. There's no need to sit here with me. Yeah, the 3 realms gathering. How can we, the observers of the God realm, not be present? Hui wandered back and forth in boredom. He couldn't help but mutter, if it weren't for the netherworld, I wouldn't have called those people over. The Saint Spirit realm and the Chanyuan realm don't have much interaction with the God realm, so it's not easy to talk to them. If it weren't for the fact that it's a matter of life and death, I wouldn't have bothered with them. That doesn't sound like something the Guardian of Sunshine would say, Yin Nuoxing teased. Hui waved his hand in annoyance. Sunshine, do you really think I don't know what those people are saying? I just didn't pay attention to it. Sunshine has its limits. There's so many things to worry about now. Where would the sunshine come from? Only those who can see hope and touch hope will be sunshine and positive. If a dead end is placed in front of you, in front of the entire void, and you have to bite the bullet and go into battle personally, if it were you, would you be able to smile? I didn't smile much in the first place. That's what I mean. Well, there's so many things to worry about now that I'm a little anxious. Yin Nuoxing nodded. Yes, many things are destined to happen. That's not that pessimistic. Hui sat up like a carp. There's still hope, but it's very small, just a little bit of hope. At least there's still hope. The expression on your face doesn't look good. Yin Nuoxing looked at Huey's wrinkled, handsome face and shook her head helplessly. She turned her gaze back to the black hole in the abyss and spaced out. Hui was also a god with a human heart. The things he thought about might not be as much as Yin Nuoxing, but his thoughts were more complicated than Yin Nuoxing's. This was because the human heart would think a lot, care a lot, take care of a lot, and take care of a lot of things. Naturally, they would be distressed if they took on too many things, let alone something that couldn't even see a tiny bit of hope. Gambling the entire void, huh? Was there any difference between doing it and gathering the strength of the entire god realm now, dozens of years later? No, it's just at this time, Hui was the one who had to worry about these things. He was the one in the light of the god realm, and Yin Nuoxing was just lurking in the shadows, an executive. In fact, he was too lazy to make decisions most of the time. Otherwise, he would be the one with the most authority in the god realm. He was just lazy, so he left this matter to Hui. One stood in the light, and the other lurked in the shadows. It was actually quite good. Hui rolled around beside Yin Nuoxing, mumbling sounds coming from his mouth. After listening for a long time, Yin Nuoxing felt a little uncomfortable. He turned his head to take a look and saw him rolling around like a ball. He couldn't help but sigh. Why don't you go back first? I'll watch for a while more. If there's really no other way, I'll go back. Hui stopped, looked up, and gritted his teeth. The last time you said this, I waited for 3,000 years. Yin Nuoxing. Hui rolled his eyes in annoyance. Gods were people who didn't have a sense of time, and the two heavenly gods of origin were even worse. He was actually fine, but Yin Nuoxing was completely unreliable. If he wanted to rely on time, he might as well do it himself. This was why he was making a fuss here. He was worried that this fellow would sit here for hundreds of millions of years. He was completely capable of doing such a thing. For example, that time, he had asked him to go to the lower primordial realm to play, and in the end, he had suddenly sensed something in the other primordial realms, and then he had sat there for a long time, thinking about the primordial realm and the void. In short, if no one was watching him, he would never stop. He lived in his own timeline and didn't care about the outside world at all. If he didn't stay here to attract his attention, he would really sit there until the end of time. Yin Nuoxing listened to his constant babbling and felt a headache coming on. His eyes were fixed on the black hole of the abyss, but he couldn't concentrate at all. His mind was filled with the image of that guy rolling around and acting cute. When he thought about it, he couldn't help but roll his eyes. Roll his eyes. He felt like he couldn't think anymore. Hui rolled one round and came to Yin Nuoxing's side. He knocked his head against Yin Nuoxing's back and said in a half-dead tone, "When are you going back? When are you going back? The people over there have already arrived. They are all urging me desperately. Let's go back quickly." Yin Nuoxing turned around and pressed down on his head. Wait a little longer. Really, just a little longer. If you keep rubbing against me, I'll throw you too. There was another inexplicable restlessness that came from his heart. An indescribable feeling of fear arose spontaneously and completely took away his attention. Not only him, Hui, who was still babbling, suddenly stopped. Both of them felt cold all over at this moment. They looked in the same direction together. 3 days ago, they also looked in the same direction. Today, it was the same direction again. This time, the feeling was even more unsettling. It was an endless feeling, as if they had been immersed in the depths of the void alone for tens of thousands of years. Their 5 senses had been taken away, their soul and spirit had been sealed, and they had completely lost their sense of the outside world. That feeling was still gradually devouring their senses until they couldn't even feel their own bodies anymore. The momentary illusion came back to their senses in an instant. Yin Nuoxing and Hui looked at each other with a dignified expression. Both of them stood up at the same time. Is it the same direction 3 days ago? It's exactly the same. Yin Nuoxing's frown deepened. That kind of power, that was the power of the heavenly god of the beginning. He actually moved his hand in the same place twice. No, this feeling was not like the feeling of moving. He had felt it many times. This was more like the feeling of doing something unconsciously after waking up. The heavenly god of the beginning seemed to still be in a half-awake state. In the past 3 days, he had unconsciously twitched twice. And this time, it was a sign that he was really going to wake up. Yin Nuoxing sighed and looked at the black hole behind him with some reluctance. It seemed that there was really no time for him to sit here and think about anything. What a pity, he was clearly just a little bit away from seeing something. Let's go back, he said softly and waved his hand to start building the portal. Huh. Hui came back to his senses and couldn't help but be shocked when he saw his actions. You don't care about the thing behind us? There's no time. Yin Nuoxing raised his head and looked at him. Didn't you say that those people have already arrived? The host could be a little late, but he can't be late. Besides, we really don't have much time. Hui quickly adjusted his state of mind. The lazy state of a salted fish just now completely disappeared. His messy white robe became neat again with a flash of light. He even reached out to grab his long hair and waved his hand fiercely. That's right, it's time to receive the guests. Where? Yin Nuoxing did not even raise his head. The magic circle in his hand became strange and unpredictable. A huge, unimaginable power of space crazily gathered. Hui grinned and said in a matter-of-fact tone, "Of course it's the Guardian Temple." With a flash of light, the two of them disappeared from this damned place at the same time, leaving only a faint distortion phenomenon left by the vibration of space. Gradually, a strange dong-dong sound came from the abyss black hole. It sounded like the sound of a drum, but also like something's heartbeat. The Guardian Temple was located in the far west of the realm of the gods. It was the westernmost part of the border between the Taiyuan domain and the Zenith domain. It was also the most sacred place in the entire realm of the gods. Huey's name was known by everyone in the world. If it weren't for the fact that the realm of the gods was such a special place, he might have been worshipped as a god, and perhaps even given birth to a religion. Unfortunately, this was the realm of the gods. There were 100 billion reasons why such a thing could not be born. If it were any other place, it might really give birth to a religion. The Guardian Temple did not have any accompanying buildings. It was either a palace complex or a palace-like big house. This was Yin Nuoxing's original words. Although it was also divided into many areas, it was also like a big room. Its structure and style were also full of the flavor of the realm of the gods. In fact, it was not different from other temples. The corners of the temple were decorated with a lot of Xian crystals. Other than that, there was nothing else. Why was it so troublesome to find a person? Although it was not difficult to talk with the soul seed, we would often be beside Yin Nuoxing when he was not in the shrine. Their small talk could not be heard by others. If the soul seed was accidentally touched, it would easily leak their words to others. Therefore, he simply blocked the soul seed every time he came out so that others could not hear their conversation. If they wanted to find him, they could only go to the shrine to inform his soul power. Although it was not difficult to talk with the soul seed, we would often be beside Yin Nuoxing when he was not in the shrine. Their small talk could not be heard by others. If the soul seed was accidentally touched, it would easily leak their words to others. Therefore, he simply blocked the soul seed every time he came out so that others could not hear their conversation. If they wanted to find him, they could only go to the shrine to inform his soul power. At this moment, the main hall of the temple was filled with people. If one looked carefully, one could see that there were 40 to 50 people. They were all big shots in the celestial realm, and among them were the Empyrean gods. Some of them could not make it, but they used projection crystals to project a trace of their soul power into the hall. Many people looked nervous. 3 days ago, the Protector's warning had caused alarm lights to light up in countless people's minds. Later, when they heard that they were going to discuss something important together, they were so nervous that they were sweating. The only two people who were not nervous were the people from the Saint Spirit realm and the Changyuan realm. They had to cross dozens of worlds and travel a short distance in the void to reach the celestial realm, so there were not many of them. Only 7 people had made it here. When the people from the two realms arrived, they were actually a little nervous. After all, the celestial realm was the #1 major realm, while the Saint Spirit realm and the Changyuan realm were ranked 2nd and 3rd. They rarely interacted with the #1 major realm, so they subconsciously thought that the people here were all powerful. Just like the emissaries who came to inform them 3 days ago, their realms were frighteningly high. Now that they observed the people in the hall, although they were all Empyrean gods, there was still a considerable gap between their realms. This allowed them to estimate the combat power of the celestial realm which made them feel much more relaxed. They felt that the emissaries were only a minority and that the three realms should be about the same in terms of combat power. This slightly smug thought lasted until a teleportation gate suddenly opened in the middle of the hall, and two figures emerged from it. When Yun Nuoxing and Hui arrived, the people from the celestial realm instantly fell silent. Some of the projection crystals placed in the corners lit up one after another, and blurry figures appeared in the hall one after another. Among them were the Empyrean gods who had followed the two into the depths of the void, and naturally, there were also people from the ancient theocrats. When everyone had arrived, the spacious hall was suddenly filled with nearly 100 people. The people from the Saint Spirit realm and the Chanyuan realm also fell silent. Those who were able to come here were the strongest of their realms, but at this moment, they still felt as if they were in an abyss. They were intimidated by the solemn atmosphere in the hall, and were also shocked by the two people who had appeared. We want to confirm some details, but I don't think I need to go into detail. You probably sensed the energy waves just now, right? Hui pulled out a chair at the head of the table and slowly said as he sat down, "Energy waves? What kind of energy waves?" The people from the Saint Spirit realm asked cautiously, their expressions somewhat puzzled. Yin Nuoxing had just sat down when she heard these words, and she couldn't help but frown. Hui was also stunned. Just as he was about to speak, the first person to his left said cautiously, "Lord Guardian, what kind of waves are you talking about?" The celestial realm hasn't sensed any special energy waves in the past month. The people from the Chanyuan realm also agreed. The void of the upper planes. It's been quite peaceful recently. Even the origin realm's battles have been very rare, so I didn't sense anything special. This time, Hui was also surprised. He exchanged a glance with Yin Nuoxing and whispered, "It seems that there's still a problem." The celestial realm and the other two realms didn't sense anything. "This is a little interesting." Yin Nuoxing nodded, then narrowed her eyes slightly, clearly not intending to speak. Hui smiled bitterly, tapped the table with his finger, and coughed softly. "Then let me say it. A few days ago, we went to the lower planes and confirmed that the entire lower planes of the Eight Elements realm had been destroyed. There were only endless sounds of worlds being destroyed, and there was no longer any order. The lower planes, so fast. The last time I went there, the lower planes was still quite peaceful. I didn't expect. There was a slight commotion in the hall. This news was no different from a heavy bomb to everyone. The people sitting in this hall could be considered the strongest group of people in the Eight Elements realm. It was normal for them to travel around the Eight Elements realm, and they definitely went to the lower planes many times. However, the last time they went there, they saw that the lower planes were flourishing, which meant that there were countless worlds. But in the blink of an eye, the lower planes were completely destroyed. They knew what was happening in the void. They knew that it was a disaster, but they didn't know anything more. There was an extreme lack of information, so they didn't know the danger of this matter. They didn't know that the entire Eight Elements realm was at risk of being destroyed, and that it was imminent. Huey's finger drew back and forth on the table in the hall, and said, "There's a lot of information that we just confirmed. In the past, we didn't pay much attention to this disaster. Of course, I believe that all of you here didn't pay much attention to it either. Most of you stayed away from it." Everyone in the hall scratched their cheeks awkwardly and looked away. Just this point alone made Yin Nuoxing completely certain that these guys were also. Oh, he didn't have the right to criticize others. After all, he was floating on the clouds all day long, either sleeping or sleeping. Yin Nuoxing swallowed and slowly sat up straight, and said, "The middle planes have been attacked, and the borders are falling. The most powerful world in the Middle Plains has almost completely fallen. I'll be frank, this war. Yes, it's a war. Put away your doubtful eyes. It's not a disaster. It's not a disaster from the beginning to the end. It's a vast war, an expedition that belongs to the enemy. This war will continue until the Eight Elements realm, the Seven Elements realm, and even the entire Greater Elements realm are reduced to ashes." Seeing that it was rare for him to speak, Hui thought for a moment and shrank back, looking at the people in the hall. "Who is our enemy?" One of the heavenly gods of origin from the realm of the gods couldn't help but ask. Yin Nuashing and Hui looked at each other, and the former said softly, "The netherworld, the companion realm of the gods. Our good neighbor." The entire hall was silent, dead silent. The people of the Saint Spirit realm and the Chanyuan realm all maintained a comical expression of shock, and they didn't even dare to breathe. There's no time for you to confirm your doubts. This is the most realistic thing that the two of us have confirmed. Hui slowly sat up straight and said, "The only way is to fight. Victory or death. The enemy is equally powerful, and they have the power to rival the entire 8 Elements realm or even surpass it. Our chances of victory are quite good, and we have to seize every opportunity. The middle planes are in a state of emergency. I think smart people know what to do, right? Do we pretend to be ignorant and wait for them to come and die, or do we gather everyone's strength and give them a hard time? I have a question." A golden-haired young man slowly stood up. He was from the realm of the gods, and he first cupped his hands toward Yin Nuashing and Hui before saying, "This disaster. War, that thing is called the Abyss Death Mist, right? We know nothing about it, and it will be very difficult to fight it. We'll talk about this in detail later. It's not a big deal, but I want you to make a statement first, because Hui was still talking, but Yin Nuashing wasn't listening carefully. He looked at the golden-haired young man, and he couldn't help but frown. He felt a strange feeling from him, and it was this feeling that made him suddenly look at that guy, and he couldn't help but frown. There was a strange feeling. It was from his position as an observer. In the past, those who came into contact with taboos or encountered something, and those who were on his execution list, would also have this strange feeling. It was the feeling of walking toward taboos, toward the abyss. After watching for a while, he shrank back and leaned against the back of his chair without saying anything. Right now, everyone's attention was on Hui, and he was paying attention to that golden-haired young man. The corner of his mouth pulled up in a strange arc, but he soon stopped. Well, he wasn't someone who could just randomly execute people. Let's wait and see. Chapter 1198. The realm of the gods was the most prosperous and the most powerful world in the 8 Elements realm. It was given the name realm by countless people, but these were all very ancient things that everyone knew. Not long after the creation of the world and the birth of the Great Origin realm, the realm of the gods was created by the Origin Great Deity. Although the Saint Spirit realm and the Chanyuan realm were also given the name realm and were also created by the same person, they were still much inferior to the realm of the gods. Perhaps it was also because the Origin Great Deity was the origin of the Origin Great Deity, but this world had some mutations. The life that was born in this world was exceptionally powerful. Another thing was that the consciousness of the world was vague, but in fact the realm of the gods did not give birth to any world consciousness. Looking at the Great Origin realm, there were many worlds that had or were allowed to have world consciousness, but the 8 Elements realm was an exception. This primordial realm's unique and powerful rules and many conditions of order limited the source worlds here. They could only be dead objects and could not have their own consciousness. Occasionally, there might be exceptions, but looking at the 8 Elements realm, there were only a few pitifully few examples. The reason why the realm of the gods had an existence similar to the world consciousness was only because of the 2 priesthoods, the choice of the realm of the gods itself. That's right, the guardian and observer of the realm of the gods were both chosen by the realm of the gods itself. It was not something that anyone wanted, and it was not even allowed to give up. It stubbornly chose someone and felt that he would definitely be able to take care of the position well. Then, it left the matter unsettled. If one did not completely die, the 2 priesthoods of the realm of the gods would not change. For example, Yin Nuashing, who had the title of repairman of the realm of the gods for countless years, reincarnated again and again, but in the end, she was still the observer of the realm of the gods. It was also because they were unable to change this somewhat rigid choice that people began to question whether or not the realm of the gods even had a world consciousness. The realm of the gods was far too willful, far too unyielding. It had randomly found a person to take up this job, and it was a job for life. If the realm of the gods truly had a consciousness, it would have handled this matter far more tactfully. Speaking of the two priesthoods, what kind of power did they bestow upon their bearers? It sounded very tempting and intimidating. The realm of the gods was the first major world in the 8 elemental realms and the 2 sacred positions in this world. It sounded very tempting, and there must be a lot of power that could not be revealed to others. But in fact, there was no such thing. Of course, the answer was not known to others. The only ones who really knew the answer were Yun Nuashing and Hui. There is nothing too special about being the so-called guardian and observer. They would not be allowed to learn any lost knowledge, such as Xian arts or divine tactics, nor would they be given any special privileges. Oh, there seemed to be some special privileges. For example, the abnormalities that Yun Nuashing sensed were told by the observer's eye. It was a special privilege and the only one. Basically, nothing in the realm of the gods could escape his eyes. It was just a matter of whether he wanted to see it or not. Anyway, now that the golden-haired young man had attracted his attention, he had seen the chaotic and strange aura on him many times. Almost all people with this aura would appear on his execution list. There were only a few who just barely touched the edge of the list. Those who were not killed by him were the kind of people who had 1 foot in the forbidden area and hurriedly retreated. Therefore, he did not kill them. After confirming that they would not play any tricks, there was no need to kill them. He still had to observe the young man in front of him. Hui slowly stood up. This battle doesn't belong to anyone. It belongs to everyone. This is a matter of the survival of the void. To put it bluntly, this is a matter of our own lives. If we don't fight, we'll just wait to be crushed. The abyssal death shroud has formed an encirclement that has sealed off the entire edge of the void. Layer by layer, it's like boiling a frog in warm water. As we wait, our strength will only decrease little by little. No one objected, and no one was foolish enough to say that they should run away at this critical moment. If they really wanted to run away, they could definitely run away. They were beings of the origin level, and they could still escape from the abyssal death fog at this moment. They could take as many people as they could with them. But what was the point? If they ran away and came back after everything was over, they would look at the ruins and sigh. Ah, at least we survived. No one with half a brain would say something like that. The outside world, the middle plane, and the lower plane were all fighting. They who were sitting in the center of the void in the 8 elemental realms had the idea of running away before the battle even started. They should have killed themselves the moment they thought of it. An Empyrean god of origin suddenly looked up and bowed respectfully to Hui. Lord Hui, we have confirmed 3 minutes ago that a powerful energy has shielded the entire upper plane and divided the void into 2 parts. This may be the reason why the Empyrean god of origin and other upper planes did not sense the energy fluctuation. The one who spoke was the Empyrean god of origin who was stationed at the edge of the upper plane. When the abyssal death fog came and was still spreading in the lower plane, he had volunteered to move his world to the edge of the upper plane. As for why he did not go directly to the lower plane, it was because the energy level would drop significantly after crossing planes. Neither he nor the people in his world could bear it, so he could only station himself at the edge of the upper plane. However, he also often observed the border between the middle plane and the lower plane. He was the one who first proposed to Hui to go to the depths of the void. The 7th warning energy barrier we set up has been confirmed to have been triggered. The abyssal death fog is advancing faster. At the same time, we have also confirmed that their energy level is slowly increasing. It seems to be increasing as they go deeper into the middle plane. The 7th level. What's the status of the 7th level? The others were not clear about the situation of the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd levels, so they could only ask directly. The 7th barrier is in the middle plane. It is slightly away from the border between the middle plane and the lower plane. We can confirm that the abyssal death fog is still maintaining that speed and is even accelerating. My people have made contact with them and sent some forces to reinforce the middle plane. However, the effect was not great. They are now retreating in batches toward the 6th and 5th levels. They have saved all the worlds they could on the way, so there is no loss. Well, it's fine as long as there are no losses. The most worrying thing now is to lose too much before the war starts. We breathed a sigh of relief. He knew the Empyrean god of origin. But then again, it's not a good idea to keep wasting energy like this. Try to gather as much energy as possible. Give them those void territories if they want them. When we retreat, it's best to burn the void into nothingness and not leave them any energy. They can't take it anyway. By the way, is there any feedback from the divine barrier? No. Yin Nuashing paused for a moment and glanced at Hui. Divine barrier? When did you make such a thing? What's it for? It's been some years. That divine barrier is used to monitor the void, the upper plane, and the middle plane. I made it when the death mist of the abyss appeared. I didn't expect it to come in handy. Hui let out a sigh and said quietly, "That's a detection barrier. It melts into the void and won't be discovered. Once a life form that's as powerful as me, or even more powerful than me, appears, the barrier will be triggered and alert me." That's right, that barrier isn't for defensive purposes. It's just an announcement to inform us that a great enemy has appeared and we need to respond urgently. As we spoke, he winked at Yin Nuashing. The latter thought for a moment and came to a realization. He roughly knew what Hui was up to. He thought that Hui would directly tell them that the enemy had a life form that was as powerful as the heavenly god of origin. Now, it seemed that he didn't want to tell them for the time being to prevent these fence-sitters, especially the Saint Spirit realm and the Chanyuan realm, from scaring them half to death and then running away before the war even started. What they should do now was to gather as much power as possible. There was no way around it, even if they were to hide the information. The human heart was the most complicated. It was easy to make it less complicated. Lord Guardian, the golden-haired young man said softly, "I'm a little worried. A force. The underworld, right? We don't know if the underworld is a force or a world. We also don't know their specific power. I've sensed the energy level of the abyss death mist. Its level on the world ladder is comparable to the primordial realm or even higher. They have the power to destroy countless worlds together. Let's assume that if we combine all the power of our 3 realms together, can we achieve this level?" Everyone frowned. Combining the power of the God realm, the Saint Spirit realm, and the Chanyuan realm, it was true that it was a little difficult to achieve this with the power of any one realm alone, mainly because they did not have enough manpower. However, it was not impossible to achieve something like the Abyss Death Mist and the Underworld's battle prowess. Still, if they had to push through the Underworld one by one, they would never be able to form such a complete encirclement. A complete circular encirclement encompasses who knows how many worlds in the void. No matter how weak a world in the lower planes was, it would still require the combat power of a pinnacle heavenly god, or even several pinnacle heavenly gods, to push through a world and directly destroy it. In some places, the counterforce would even be stronger than the middle planes. If that was the case, it would be even more impossible for them to form such a perfect encirclement. In fact, it was possible. Yin Nuashing knew that the Abyss Death Mist had many different characteristics. It could devour all energy, continuously split into spawns, and continuously split into the Abyss Death Mist. It was possible to do this with the infinite energy of the void alone. However, the God realm and the 3 realms could not do this. If the combined power of the 3 realms were to sweep in from the lower planes all the way to the center, it would be easy at first, but the resistance would gradually become stronger. In a middle of the middle planes, the resistance would suddenly become a level higher, and then it would be the upper planes. It would be really difficult for the 3 realms to sweep across the upper planes. The power of the underworld is very strong. I don't know who their strongest is, but I suspect that their leader, the Lord of the Underworld, is a great being who survived the annihilation storm at the end of the primordial era. According to the records of the 3 realms, there were many Empyrean gods of origin during the primordial era. There were even countless Empyrean gods of origin in the middle planes. There were also quite a number of Empyrean gods of origin in the three realms. However, he and the others have all fallen, unable to survive the annihilation storm, and perished in the void. But if there is such a powerful being, who survived? The blonde youth spoke softly of his guesses and worries in a low voice, but it caused everyone in the hall to frown. Their faces were solemn, and none of them said a word. The Empyrean gods of origin who had followed Yin Nuashing into the depths of the first turn of the void glanced at the two of them. They wisely did not say anything, and did not mention that they had already learned from the Guardian and his friends that the primordial god was still alive. That is indeed something we need to pay attention to. Huey's expression did not change. He glanced at the blonde youth and said softly, "But my divine barrier has not triggered the alarm. For now, no one above my level has come to the middle plane, and the underworld's front line has penetrated quite a distance into the middle plane. Although this is just the beginning of a thread for the entire middle plane, it has indeed crossed my barrier and is ignored by it." The blonde youth was about to say something, but Hui reached out to stop him. He stood up and slowly walked to the window and said softly, "Of course, your words have reminded us that in this world, the origin is not the strongest. We may not be the ones standing at the top of the void. There may be more powerful beings lurking in this world, and there may be people of that level in the underworld. So we have to be more careful when we fight and deal with them even more carefully. Don't let your guard down, just because your opponents are just a bunch of people who are neither human nor ghost without intelligence. Sometimes it is fatal to fail miserably in the gutter. After all, they have not come out yet. Our opponents should be those from the underworld who started this chaos. If we make mistakes when we fight against these cannon fodders, shiny cannon fodders, how can we fight in the future?" The blonde youth was slightly stunned. After thinking for a while, he could not think of anything to refute. He nodded and said, "You're right." Yin Nuashing rolled his eyes at Hui. This guy was just copying his words. How much time do we have to prepare before the power of the middle plane is significantly weakened? Hui blinked at him, then looked at the heavenly god of origin who was stationed at the edge and asked seriously. The heavenly god of origin was silent for a while and did not answer immediately. Instead, he turned around and looked somewhere. His real body did not come over, and only a little of his soul power came over. At this moment, he was probably talking to someone. His expression changed several times, and after a few minutes of conversation, he turned around and said, "Less than 3 months." 3 months? Everyone was shocked. Didn't this mean that the middle plane would lose at least 40% of its power in these 3 months? That would be enough to cause a significant weakening and blow to the power of the entire middle plane. More than half of the middle plane will fall in 3 months? The heavenly god of origin shook his head and said, "The heavens light realm of the middle plane and a few other large worlds that have formed their own realms are about to join forces. They have instigated more than half of the powerful beings in the middle plane to form a united front and wage war against the underworld. The time will be 2 months later. I'm only speculating on the time they will gather and their chances of winning against the underworld. The chances of winning are very low, so the middle plane is very likely to collapse in that all-out battle. The chances of winning are indeed not high. If they do not have support from the upper plane, their battle may not last for long." Everyone looked at each other, and their expressions became even more solemn. Sometimes it was this kind of complete gathering that made people feel uneasy. You can't put all your eggs in the same basket. Everyone knew this. However, they could also understand the thoughts of the people in the middle plane. Since the underworld was already at their doorstep, why didn't they hurry up and fight back? Or were they just sitting there and watching? They watched as the lights of the worlds went out one by one and fell one by one. It was already too late for them to pick up their weapons when the battle was already right in front of them. From this point of view, the people in the middle plane were actually doing much better than them. At the very least, with just a roar and an uprising, they were able to gather a considerable amount of power within 3 months. On the other hand, the people in the upper plane boasted that they had high energy levels, great power, and were not afraid of being beaten. It was not difficult for them to gather together. Hui stood in front of the window and tilted his head to glance at Yun Nuashing. He gave him a look and signaled him to say something. The latter thought for a while, sat on a chair, and stretched. He said in a lazy tone, "All the pillars of creation and the creation's barrier have been fully charged. When we leave, no one can think of bypassing us to break through the creation's barrier." Yin Nuashing looked back at him and said, "We can fight without worry. We don't have to worry about the people of the underworld raiding our property, as long as it's not Yuanshi. No, even if it's a team of Yuanshi gods, with the uniqueness of this world, the creation's barrier can last for half a month." Hui nodded. Yin Nuashing continued, "There's no abyssal death fog in the upper plane. There's no sign of distortion in the void. It's unlikely that the people of the underworld would come here to cause trouble. Moreover, since they took pains to shield the upper plane and prevent us from sensing the energy of the outside world, there must be a reason. When all the forces of the upper plane are gathered, it's an unprecedentedly powerful force. If we have this force, we have a good chance of winning." Yin Nuashing said, "The worlds in the top 100 energy levels are also safe. I've been in contact with many of them before. We can still call for help from 10 or 20 worlds. As for the rest, we'll go and persuade them. If they don't cooperate, we'll tie up the strongest and most influential person in their world and throw them in front of the abyssal death fog. If they don't cooperate, we'll throw them in." Everyone was speechless. The first part sounded normal, but what's with the last sentence? Hui nodded hard. Everyone was speechless. He actually agreed. He even agreed. "All right, this is an emergency. Human rights and not human rights. Those things are useless. If they don't comply, we'll just use a stronger force to suppress them." Yin Nuashing's veins popped out on his forehead. He took a deep breath and gritted his teeth. Some special worlds may have more in-depth research on combat than the realm of the gods. The realm of the gods is a well-rounded world. It's omnipotent and proficient in all aspects. However, there's no such thing as a single-minded focus. I've traveled to many worlds. Some worlds are quite knowledgeable about prolonged combat. Some worlds are very knowledgeable about the use of energy, and some worlds are more suited for such large-scale brawls. Phew! Now that we're fighting in the void, we should be able to make it in time if we're in an emergency. Hui nodded like he was pounding garlic. Yin Nuashing pointed outside, his face ashen. "If you need to go to the toilet, turn left when you're out there. Don't me here. Are you done?" "Oh." Hui shrunk his neck weakly. Everyone, their worldview had collapsed. Yin Nuashing was so angry that he laughed. Half of his sleepiness had disappeared. If it weren't for the serious atmosphere in the hall, he would have thrown this guy into the sky. Everyone in the hall was stunned when they saw the Guardian's fawning expression. They tried to figure out the relationship in their minds, but couldn't figure out at all. They couldn't figure out who was who. Logically speaking, this Guardian was the strongest on the surface. His close friend should be on the same level. However, it seemed a little beyond their imagination. Anyway, the two of them were elusive. The Guardian was rarely seen, and the one beside him was even rarer. Yin Nuashing also stood up, stretched his back, and let out a long yawn, and said, "No matter whether it is increasing our own strength or being on guard against them, it is only one of the steps. And before all of this, we have to go and have a talk with the people of the middle plane. Not to mention," he turned to Hui with a serious expression, "we can't escape from this battle. However, the thing that will decide the fate of the void is, I know, we have to shoulder this burden." We let out a long sigh. At least, the two of them were the strongest in the 8 elements realm. Naturally, they had to shoulder more responsibilities. Moreover, they knew more. They knew what was waiting for them ahead. It was because they knew that there was no way to avoid it. They could only face it head-on. No matter what, they had to face it head-on. Yin Nuashing and Hui raised their heads and looked at the blue sky with white clouds outside. The sun shone on the realm of the gods. It was still summer, and the sun was shining brightly. The weather was really good. If they didn't have so many worries, they would find a place to lie down and bask in the sun. It was another lazy day. Unfortunately, let's fight and fulfill our respective missions. For our world, for the 8 elements realm. Chapter 1199. Wu Hao, the hierarch of the divine court of absolute beginning, had been very anxious recently. He had an inexplicable sense of irritation in his heart. This feeling had been born 4 days ago during the Three Realms gathering, and it hadn't disappeared even today. It lingered above his head like a dark cloud, making him look very haggard. Of course, it could also be because he had been busy these past few days. In any case, his brilliant golden hair was a mess, giving him a rather dispirited feeling. He felt like he was being watched by something, but every time he thought about it carefully, this feeling would disappear without a trace. Everything seemed to be an illusion, but he had been stuck in the origin realm for who knew how many years. How could he still have any illusions? He couldn't find the source of that feeling, and even after meditating for an entire day, he still couldn't find it. He could only let this feeling take root in his heart. He still had something to do. After the Three Realms gathering 4 days ago, the God Realm entered a state of war. News of the underworld had already spread throughout the God Realm, and the actions of the Protectors and the others had also spread. What made the Protectors and the others feel a little gratified was that more than 80% of the people had expressed their support. Whether it was because of their reputation or other reasons, so many people had been pulled together. In short, they had successfully gathered a considerable amount of power. The Saint Spirit Realm and the Chanyuan Realm had also responded today. It was also today that the Three Realms had entered an expedition to the Middle Plane together. That earth-shattering battle formation made everyone's blood boil. He stayed behind. Although he was also an origin god, he wasn't known for his strength. He had the basic strength of an origin god, but it was difficult to ask him to be stronger. He wasn't a fighter, so he was only suitable for making talismans, formations, pill cauldrons, and so on. However, 60% of the people in the divine court of absolute beginning had volunteered to go on the expedition. After the group of people left noisily, the divine court became much quieter. Normally, the divine court would be very noisy. Now, even the god world was much quieter. Whether it was the human race, the Yao race, or even the ancient royal family, 80% of the beings in the god world had charged out. The weakest of them was a high-tier god, and there were as many gods and heavenly gods as there were hairs on an ox. His heart was getting more and more agitated, to the point that he couldn't sit still. The feeling of being watched by something was getting stronger, but his soul couldn't find anything. Wu Hao pushed the book in his hand to the side in frustration. He stood up from his chair and looked up at the void. Now, the expeditionary army should have already arrived in the Middle Plane. The battle there should be quite intense. With the support of the three major worlds, the people from the other worlds in the upper plane should have heard the news as well. In the end, the power gathered would be difficult for the underworld to shake. He felt that he should be happy that someone was going to deal with the abyssal death mist, or at least show a little bit of happiness. However, for various reasons, his face was gloomy all day long. Wu Hao once again threw the book in his hand onto the desk in frustration. He walked to the window and pushed open the rectangular window that was almost a meter tall. Looking at the gloomy sky that seemed like a storm was about to descend, he felt even more depressed. "It's going to rain," he murmured. He took in a breath of the hot air and closed the window. He paced around the room for a long time. As the uneasiness in his heart grew stronger, he walked faster. After pacing back and forth a few times, his eyes suddenly widened. He seemed to have woken up and felt something. His body flashed and disappeared from the room. When he reappeared, he was in the lower temple of the Divine Temple. When he appeared again, he was at the bottom level of the Divine Palace of the Taichu Divine Court. This was the forbidden area of the entire Taichu Divine Court. Normally, no one other than him could come here, and he was also doing some unknown things here. Well, it was not quite right to say that it was unknown. It could be considered a type of secret that every faction had. However, his was a little special. He was a researcher, so the things he created were naturally strange. He placed them here only for safety reasons, to prevent stupid people from touching his things without permission and causing a series of dangerous things. The bottom floor of the temple was embedded in a rock layer. There were vines of ancient trees climbing up the walls. The dark and damp bottom floor was covered with black, twisted vines. The center of the roots flickered with a faint red light, making this dark underground even darker and stranger. There was a door deep in the bottom floor of the temple. The strange patterns on the door were mostly merged with the surrounding vines, as if they had grown together. Wu Hao pushed the door open with force. A gust of black wind blew out of the space inside with a few gusts of wind blowing his messy golden hair. Behind the door was a star field, filled with a faint power of the stars and some complete fluctuations of the rules. It seemed to have been forcibly copied from a part of the starry sky and then forcibly moved to this space. It was normal for it to be damaged. To him, this was just a small laboratory, and this part of the starry sky was just a place he casually grabbed to store some dangerous things. If there was any danger, he could bury this space into the void at the first moment. Wu Hao walked into this part of the starry sky and turned to close the door. The space of the galaxy became intact, and no one could tell that there was a door in this place. He seemed to have pushed open a gap in the starry sky and walked in. This space looked rather desolate, and the surrounding space was faintly distorted. The stars in the distance were scattered, and many of them were in an abnormal state of distortion. There were rings, splits, and many others. The starry sky seemed to have encountered something on its long journey. It became like this when it fell into his eyes. The dangerous item stored in this part of the starry sky was also the only dangerous item. It was just lying there quietly. It was pure black, like a black hole in the starry sky. It did not move, but one look at it would cause uneasiness and magnify it infinitely. Along with the uneasiness came an equally strong sense of disgust. The existence of this ink-like thing alone could cause the disgust of countless beings. The abyssal death mist, and it was an extremely condensed mass that took up 1/3 of this part of the starry sky. It actually existed here. If it exploded in the realm of the gods, with the characteristics of the abyssal death mist and the characteristics of this first major world, who knows what kind of changes would occur? What was the difference between this and planting man-eating flowers in one's back garden? Wu Hao was not worried about anything. He walked up to the abyssal death mist with ease and familiarity. He had captured this thing tens of millions of years ago and hid it here. He knew about the terrible war in the lower planes and the destructive power of the abyssal death mist. He had spent a lot of effort to capture this mass back then, and now it was imprisoned in this part of the starry sky, bound tightly by countless chains of order. He had studied here for tens of millions of years, but to no avail. He picked up a cluster of starlight beside him and dived his consciousness into it to read the information inside. After a while, he pushed it aside and walked to the front of the abyssal death mist. Looking at it carefully, there was a thin layer of energy barrier between the place where he stopped and the black mist. That layer of barrier had isolated the latter, and it had been isolated for tens of millions of years. He was not worried that the black ink-like thing would break free. If I were you, I wouldn't touch that thing again. Before Wu Hao could reach out and touch the barrier, a faint voice came from behind him, startling him. However, he wasn't too surprised. He had said that he knew the feeling of being stared at by something, but he didn't know who or what was staring at him. At this moment, when that thing appeared, he was only slightly surprised, and 80% of it was because that thing was standing behind him without him noticing, so he was surprised. This space has been stagnant for tens of millions of years. A cage? Ha! The voice chuckled. Perhaps you think it's very stable, but you haven't noticed at all that this space, this void, has been completely devoured. Perhaps you haven't been here for a long time, so you haven't noticed its movements. The abyssal death mist can't even bind the void, it can even devour it. It's a huge loophole in this world, and the enemy can even use it as a passage to freely wander around the void. How dare you place it here? Wu Hao slowly turned around, and then narrowed his eyes. What he saw was perhaps a person. Its entire body was emitting a dazzling white light, and it seemed to have silver hair and silver clothes draped over its body. Even its eyebrows and eyes were so dazzling that he could not see its face clearly. He quietly looked at this person of light. His expression was calm and did not change. He had never seen it before, never seen such a thing. However, the Tao energy that it possessed was extremely frightening and terrifying. It was more terrifying than anyone he knew, even more so than the guardian, the abnormality of the realm of the gods. So it was hidden in this place. The barrier of the Empyrean god of origin was indeed something I could not penetrate without some effort. I thought it was just a small fry, so I ignored it. I did not expect you to bring me such a big guy. The person who was emitting a dazzling white light stood up from his position, leaning against the starry sky. He slowly walked to the barrier and patted it lightly. Then, he reached out and grabbed the cluster of starlight that contained countless information. He grinned. "What are you doing? You dare to study something like the abyssal death mist? About the leakage of the abyssal death mist and the emergency measures to deal with it. Oh, and this, the process of the abyssal death mist transforming the life forms of order. The way the abyssal death mist spreads, the abyssal death mist. You're walking on a tightrope. For the Yuan world, it is all worth it." Wu Hao straightened his back and said firmly, "For the Yuan world?" The person suddenly sneered and waved the cluster of light in his hand. "Look at this. Ideas on how to pollute the realm of the gods with the abyssal death mist, how to speed up the spread of the abyssal death mist, how to increase the energy density of the abyssal death mist. You call this for the realm of the gods. I even suspect that you are someone sent by the netherworld." He waved the cluster of light in his hand. His voice gradually became cold, and a faint killing intent spread out. Wu Hao's eyes widened in shock. He could only see the information hidden in the cluster of light with his soul power. How could he see it? It is only for research purposes. It is not what you think. Wu Hao shook his head and said in a calm voice, "The abyssal death mist first appeared at the edge of the lower plains. I had already discovered it at that time. 60 million years ago, I painstakingly captured a cluster of it. All of my research is to deal with." The person who was emitting a dazzling white light raised his hand and interrupted him. "Evidence? Research results?" Wu Hao's silence made him laugh even more heartily. "You see, it is only your side of the story. Why should I believe those? Compared to those, I believe in another kind of evidence more. It tells me the abnormalities in your body, the distortions in your body. All right, there are still results. Look at yourself. How ignorant." Wu Hao's face revealed a blank expression. That person stretched out a finger in his direction and lightly pressed down. Suddenly, a reddish-black light spot appeared on his body. After the light spot appeared, his body turned into an existence similar to energy. That light spot set off a huge energy vortex in the middle of his body, and it kept collapsing downwards. You became the manifestation of the abyssal death mist many years ago. What kind of power bound you? Or did you become it willingly? Wu Hao's expression changed drastically. So that's how it is. You accidentally infected yourself, but you successfully bound that part of yourself, the part that still maintains order. That's why I can only sense a weak abnormality from your body. I can't directly judge. The person who was emitting the white light turned around. An enormous amount of energy that could shake the void crazily appeared in his palm. A dazzling white light crazily appeared. He held this thundercloud that seemed to be releasing thunderstorms and slammed it into the abyssal death mist behind the energy barrier. PFFF, that dazzling white energy turned into a small but condensed crystallized energy beam. It was sent out by that palm and pierced through the entire abyssal death mist. The black gas that had been silent for countless years suddenly surged like boiling clouds. Rumbling energy vibrations spread throughout the entire star system. Stop! The material that he had poured countless years of painstaking effort into was destroyed in the blink of an eye. Wu Hao's eyes instantly turned blood red. He lunged toward the person who was emitting the white light like a madman. The heavenly god of origin's vast and mighty energy spread throughout the entire starry sky. He crushed a gem hidden in his left hand without hesitation. His right hand held a formation and talisman that exploded toward the person who was emitting the white light. An enormous energy aura suddenly exploded behind the person who was emitting the white light like a shockwave, shattering the starry sky behind him. The shockwave spread to Wu Hao, causing his charging figure to be instantly swept back. He couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. This thing will only harm the God realm if you keep it. It has already grown to the point where you can't control it and can already devour you. This is why you haven't come to this place recently. What's the point of keeping it? Wait for it to grow a little stronger, tear through the barrier, and rush out to harm the God realm? The person who was emitting the white light beam didn't even turn his head. The dazzling white light beam that shot into the abyssal death mist suddenly exploded, tearing open a huge crack in the starry sky that led to the void. Then, his hands began to move as if they were moving the clouds and the sun, controlling the abyssal death mist to pour into the void. The abyssal death mist that had accumulated and grown for tens of millions of years suddenly surged. Faint traces of it could be clearly seen. It was completely black, and it was very difficult to see a little bit of it. It was as if a piece of cloud had been slashed by a blade. The abyssal death mist that had been dormant for countless years finally woke up and began to release the energy that destroyed the balance and tore the order. However, it was already too late. The person who was emitting the white light looked at it coldly and suddenly clenched his hand. The big crack suddenly erupted with an even more violent suction force, crazily sucking the abyssal death mist into the crack. In less than a few minutes, all of it would be sucked into the big crack and be decomposed by the ultimate chaos in the void, as if it had never existed. Suddenly, a crazy and almost violent energy came from behind him, causing the person who was emitting the white light to frown slightly. He turned around and saw countless black auras mixed with golden auras rushing toward him. The crazy destructive power shattered the starry sky and tore the void apart. The person who was emitting the white light frowned slightly and half turned around. One of his hands was controlling the abyssal death mist to pour into the void, while the other hand was raised. A burst of energy burst out and fiercely grabbed at Wu Hao. Both of Wu Hao's eyes were already blood red. His blood rushed to his head, and he suddenly felt as if he was in the abyss. A powerful energy that was as strong as the world smashing down on him enveloped him and destroyed all of his aura. His aura was almost frozen. This extremely domineering and also had an extremely powerful energy that destroyed the balance of the rules. It was just like the abyssal death mist that he had studied for countless years. It was very similar. Both of them were products of loopholes that broke free from the shackles of the rules of order. This kind of aura that existed in the realm of the gods, he had only heard of it once. He was a dancer who walked on the edge of the sword, an expert who was on the edge of courting death. He knew many anecdotes about the realm of the gods. Those who walked on the edge of the rules would be ruthlessly wiped out by a power that appeared out of nowhere if they went deeper. That power walked in the darkness. No matter who it was, they would feel as if they were in the abyss. He had also heard of it and had countless guesses about that person or that power. However, when it really appeared in front of him, he knew that he was wrong, completely wrong. However, he would never allow this guy to destroy his years of hard work. His years of what had he been doing? What had he done in the past? The abyssal death mist is deeply infected. The surge of blood and chi has even accelerated the infection. Poor guy. The person in white light sighed and shook his head helplessly. You should have let go when you first realized that you were infected. You should have blown this damned place into the void instead of trying to study something with a fluke mentality. In the end, what did you get? What did you study? You stirred up so much trouble. Look at yourself now. Look at what you have become. Wu Hao had already lost consciousness. He was already dead. It would be wrong to say that he was completely dead. Only his weak soul was still bitterly holding on. His consciousness had already been devoured by the abyssal death mist. His skin had begun to darken, and the destructive power of the abyssal death mist had begun to surge wildly in his body and soul. He was evolving into an abyssal death mist derivative, an Empyrean god of origin-level derivative. The person in white light frowned. He still could not explain many of the characteristics of the abyssal death mist. If he allowed Wu Hao to completely transform, he did not know if it would affect the even larger dark army behind them. In any case, he had already discovered some inconceivable signs. That guy's research was not completely useless, but it was not worth it to lose the life of an Empyrean god of origin for that little bit of information. You have long been controlled by the abyssal death mist. The person in white light did not care if Wu Hao's remaining soul could hear those words, and simply treated it as if he was talking to himself. It has devoured half of your consciousness, half of your soul, and controls half of your actions. The things you do not know, the orders you do not know, are carried out by that other half. Everything it does will eventually cause this treasure you have brought back to explode 1,000 years later. When that happens, the divine realm will become a base camp for the abyssal death mist, a base camp that has erupted in the higher planes. Can you imagine the consequences? Go to hell, reincarnate, and start all over again. You still have a little bit of your soul left, and now you want to, huh? The person in white light stared blankly for a moment. He suddenly sensed a boundless energy reaction from Wu Hao's body that was transforming into a monster. The violent energy was like a great sun that was about to be destroyed, and he could not help but feel astonished. That guy was actually going to self-destruct. No, self-destruct. Was he trying to destroy himself? To destroy that body that was already 80% transformed into an abyssal death mist derivative? If that's the case, do as you wish. Just as the person in white light sighed, he sensed a group of energy appearing at the doorway of this planetary system. That energy of brilliant and sacred light tore apart the silence of this dark planetary system. A huge portal abruptly opened in the starry skies, and a large group of people rushed in under the illumination of that brilliant light. Before Hui could steady himself, he saw the abyssal death mist that was boiling and falling into the void. His eyes widened at once, but before he could do anything, Wu Hao's body suddenly expanded. A destructive force that could shatter endless planetary systems swept out from the shattered starry skies, and the explosion that contained the power of laws caused countless people to cover their ears in shock. TSK. Why did he come back at such a good time? That guy even brought me some trouble. Hui pricked up his ears and looked doubtfully at the place where the brilliant light shone. That voice sounded a little familiar. Chapter 1200. An energy storm with the destructive power of laws swept across this star sector. The destructive aura caused a series of destructive impacts in the energy storm, causing the entire star sector to collapse along with the void. The self-destructive energy impact of the heavenly god of origin made the experts of the heavenly realm tremble slightly. They could not help but take a few steps back before it reached them. That level of energy was enough to completely destroy a part of the void in the lower primordial realm from order and law. When it bloomed in the 8th primordial realm, it could also turn that part of the void into nothingness, which could not be restored for countless years. That kind of energy was enough to stir up even more chaos in the void. The scale of the energy storm before them was extremely shocking, but it was not as terrifying as it had been described. The figure of white light and Hui Zheng worked together to stop the energy storm from spreading. Moreover, Wu Hao had chosen to self-destruct instead of self-destruct. 70% of the energy contained in the storm was in the process of self-destruction, which meant that only 30% of the energy that had caused such a destructive impact was effective. The storm lasted for 10 minutes before it gradually subsided and slowly dissipated. The dazzling white light suddenly shrank into a white dot and disappeared. As the destructive storm dissipated, this starry sky, this void, starry sky once again appeared in front of everyone. A considerable part of the starry sky had been completely transformed into nothingness and chaos. Everyone could feel the chaotic aura coming from the void. On the other side of the void, there was a human figure emitting a lustrous white light. On the other side of the void was the rapidly disappearing abyssal death fog. The black fog made everyone's pupils shrink slightly. Ignoring the changes in everyone's expressions, the figure of white light waved its hand, and the last of the abyssal death fog fell into the void. The crack was also closed by it. The two groups of people stared at each other for a while. Huey's group had dozens of people, all of whom were heavenly gods of origin, but they all felt an inexplicable fear. The person opposite them gave them an unusually dangerous feeling, which made them feel that it could bypass their guardians and kill them one by one. The void in the starry sky slowly rumbled with the power of laws and order. The remaining weak laws were gradually being repaired. The figure of white light looked at the destroyed space, then raised its eyes to glance at the people in the distance. It silently turned around and walked into the depths of the starry sky. Its figure drifted away like sand in the wind. "Stop!" Seeing this scene, one of the heavenly gods of origin suddenly roared. They had clearly seen what had just happened. One of the heavenly gods of origin had been destroyed in front of their eyes. Wong. A white ball of light smashed into his face. The person who spoke was stunned and subconsciously put up his guard. However, he didn't suffer any attack. He let out a small sigh of relief. When he turned his gaze, the guy who was covered in white light had disappeared. Under the strong gaze of the guardian and dozens of people, he disappeared easily as if he was visiting someone. We took the ball of white light and read the information inside. He couldn't help but frown. "Lord Guardian, is there a problem?" Seeing this, the person beside him asked nervously. Hui raised his head and looked at the place where the man had disappeared. He then lowered his head and looked at the ball of light. After a while, he stuffed the white ball of light into the hands of the people beside him. "Of course there are problems. Look at what Wu Hao has done all these years." The person who received the ball of light quickly scanned through the information contained in the Guan Yuan. His expression changed more than 10 times within a few seconds. It was as if he was changing faces. One moment it was white, the next it was green, the next it was blue, and the next it was purple. Everyone could see the fear in the last expression. We pondered for a while and said, "You guys clean up this place first." It poured the abyssal death mist into the land of nothingness. However, you still have to be careful. After all, this place has been contaminated by the abyssal death mist for tens of millions of years. I'll go after it and see if I can catch up with that guy. The guardian left in a hurry after leaving a sentence. Many people with uncertain expressions were left behind. However, they quickly collected their emotions and divided up the work to clean up the broken place. The sky was clear and the air was clear. It was summer in the realm of the gods. The scorching sunlight from the two suns shone on the realm of the gods. However, it didn't make the continent lively. The disturbance in the depths of the void had taken away 80% of the life on this bustling continent. It was cold and cheerless. Only the low-level people maintained their lives on the realm of the gods. When they were free, they would daydream about the things that happened in the depths of the void. When they were free, they would take a nap in the afternoon when people were the most lazy. They would look at the huge white clouds outside the window. It was very comfortable. While they were at it, they would also say to the people around them, "That cloud is so big. It can even cover a large city." There was only the white cloud in the sky that was hundreds of thousands of miles long and wide. Looking around the sky, there were no clouds anywhere else. It was as if all the clouds had gathered together. Looking down at the cloud from a higher place, one could see a small dot of a different color in the center. If one looked carefully, one could see that the small dot was actually a person lying on the soft white cloud. The person had black hair and black clothes. This color was very eye-catching on the white cloud. As long as one wasn't blind or short-sighted, one could see it. The person who had been lying on top of the cloud since the day started was naturally the famous observer of the realm of the gods, Yin Nuashing. He was an obscure observer who loved to sleep in. His innate talent for sleeping was ingrained in his bones, and his mind was filled with nothing but sleep. Perhaps Feng Ling would be a better name? Yin Nuashing turned over unconsciously. Her palm lazily touched a small piece of cloud. Using the strength that could crush a world's light into the size of a grain of sand, she squeezed the cloud into a solid form. Then, she placed the cloud over her eyes to block the dazzling sunlight of the two suns above. A shadow shone on her body. Yin Nuoxing's eyebrows twitched. She squeezed her eyelids to make the cloud move to the side. When she opened her eyes, as expected, she saw Hui looking down at her with his hands behind his back. Seeing that she had woken up, Hui grinned and said, "Big lazy bug, you're finally awake?" Yin Nuoxing yawned lazily. She scratched her itchy stomach and said, "Didn't you just arrive? Why do you have to say that?" "Huh, it seems like you've been here for a long time." Then, she suddenly woke up and said, "Wait, didn't you guys go on an expedition?" Yin Nuoxing sat up abruptly and said, "How long have I slept? You guys are all beaten back. The people of the underworld are here." We stared blankly at her and couldn't help but let out a wry smile. It seemed that this guy was quite self-aware. He knew that he would usually sleep until the end of time. He waved his hand and slowly sat down beside his old friend. Then he said in a low voice, "One of us, the heavenly origin god, has fallen." Yin Nuoxing's expression changed slightly. She came back to her senses and said, "Died? That was fast." We shook his head and said, "No, he didn't die on the battlefield. He didn't follow the expeditionary army to the front lines. He was just an origin researcher. Yeah, talismans, spell formations, and the like. He wasn't very powerful. We didn't force anyone to go on the expedition with us, so he stayed in the realm of the gods." "Huh." Yin Nuoxing tilted her head in confusion. "How did he fall in the realm of the gods? I didn't feel a burst of energy that was enough to kill the heavenly origin god. That person used the abyssal death mist. Maybe. He might have used the abyssal death mist to kill Wu Hao, but he threw the abyssal death mist into the void. I thought he wanted the abyssal death mist to spread across the realm of the gods." "Phone, why do you think? That guy, is he from the underworld? Or something else?" Wu Hao sent a signal back to tell us that the realm of the gods had been attacked. Our expeditionary army had just reached a place that was only a few thousand worlds away from the front lines when a group of people rushed back to support us. I thought of many things on the way here, but I didn't think it would be like this. Did we miscalculate something? Even here, there is abyssal death mist. Phone. We scratched his head and looked very troubled. He had been talking for a long time, but he didn't hear the voice of the person beside him. He turned his head in confusion and was stunned. Yin Nuoxing was lying down again. Hui was dumbfounded. After all this time, he was talking to the air. "Phone, don't sleep anymore." Hui anxiously pulled Yin Nuoxing up and shook him left and right. "The realm of the gods is in trouble. How can an observer like you be so calm?" Yin Nuoxing finally woke up a little after being shaken around. He rolled his eyes and sat up in a daze. "Yan Hui, don't worry. Didn't we agree a few days ago that you guys will go on an expedition and leave the rear to me? It's because I'm worried that someone will sneak behind me that I'm staying behind, isn't it?" Yin Nuoxing showed a sleepy smile and gave him a thumbs up. "I'm an observer. What's going on in the realm of the gods that I don't know?" Hui. These three yawns made him want to yawn as well. He sighed and shook his head. He looked at Yin Nuoxing and stretched lazily. "But isn't the realm of the gods in trouble now?" Crack. The sound of bones dislocating caused Yin Nuoxing to fall straight down. He lay there stiffly for a while and said awkwardly, This isn't because, but I really didn't, We looked at Yin Nuoxing with an unusually serious and solemn expression. He couldn't say anything. The two of them looked at each other in silence for a while. After a long time, Yin Nuoxing noticed that the clouds below him had drifted far away from the city just now. His eyelids drooped slightly, and after a moment, he suddenly laughed bitterly. Hui, your acting skills are too bad. Hui was slightly stunned. He touched his face. Yin Nuoxing looked at him and shook his head. Since you wanted to raise your doubts from the beginning, why didn't you say it directly? You're not suited for this kind of roundabout way of speaking. Your expression just made the roundabout way of speaking come back to the original track. Is it that obvious? Hui was stunned for a while. His expression finally relaxed. This time, he said in a relaxed manner, "Then, that person really is you." He was stunned for a moment because he saw Yun Nuoxing's body emitting a silver-white light. His clothes and hair gradually turned silver-white. His eyebrows and eyes also turned white. His entire body was filled with a bright white light. He saw Huey's surprised expression and asked, "Are you surprised?" Hui nodded. Yin Nuoxing continued, "Actually, I'm more surprised. How did you recognize me?" "There are two reasons. The first is that you spoke. Even if you deliberately altered your voice, it's still too similar. The second is that the only person in the entire God realm who can release the kind of pressure stronger than mine is you." Yin Nuoxing was silent for a while. Then he helplessly rolled his eyes. "Then it seems that my acting isn't good enough. Feng, you want to ask me why I did that?" Yin Nuoxing slowly stood up. His previous laziness was swept away, and he said, "I discovered that there was something wrong with the realm of the gods a long time ago. However, it was very weak, and I couldn't find it. This was something that happened many years ago. I couldn't find it, and I didn't have the patience to continue looking. Because nothing major happened, I gradually put this matter aside. Until 4 days ago, on the day of the Three Realms gathering." Yin Nuoxing turned around and looked at him. "That Pope of the Absolute Beginning Divine Court is called Wu Hao, right? He has an anomaly on his body. You know, the observers I gave me the power to see some of the distorted and abnormal things that exist in the realm of the gods." Hui nodded. "Many times, it was because of this ability that he could solve some problems in advance. It was almost as if he could predict the future." Yin Nuoxing paused for a moment. "I've been using the observer's Ida lock onto Wu Hao for the past few days. It was only when he went to the bottom of the temple and saw that thing that I knew where that anomaly came from. Tens of millions of years ago, he captured a cluster of abyssal death mist from the edge of the lower plains. It was the last part that you saw me pouring into the void. He used it as a research material and had been studying it all this time. However, he didn't know that the abyssal death mist had already planted a seed in his soul. He used the power of the heavenly god of origin to suppress it, but he couldn't suppress it forever. One day it would erupt. He would release the abyssal death mist, and that cluster of abyssal death mist had accumulated a terrifying amount of energy over the past tens of millions of years. Once that energy was released, half of the realm of the gods would be destroyed. For the sake of the realm of the gods, I had no choice but to destroy it." Hui was silent for 2 seconds. "So you destroyed him as well?" "No, at least not at first." Yin Nuoxing shook her head. "I was only destroying the abyssal death mist. At the time, he hadn't been completely transformed by the abyssal death mist, but later, Hui understood. Later, they made it to the end and saw the scene of Wu Hao's self-destruction. Perhaps the heavenly god of origin that had been transformed into a manifestation by the abyssal death mist was trying to atone for his sins? Or perhaps he didn't want to see himself become an ugly monster, so he chose to self-destruct. Regardless of the reason, Wu Hao had chosen to self-destruct, and they didn't have the chance to ask him again. "I think." Hui sighed and wanted to say something, but Yin Nuoxing shook her head. "There's no chance. A being that has been deeply corrupted by the abyssal death mist, even the heavenly god of origin, you and I, wouldn't be able to save it. Hui, sometimes you don't need to know these things. You just have to fight on the front lines, and I'll keep an eye on everything in the realm of the gods." Hui was silent for a while, and suddenly looked up. How long have you been doing these things behind my back?" "These things?" Yin Nuoxing tilted her head. Hui laughed bitterly. "I've already asked around on the way to find you, and I know some things. You've been doing a lot of things in secret. I just didn't expect it, and I didn't expect it either. I knew about the executioner that walks in the darkness, and I thought you knew about it too. But you should have your reasons for not doing anything, but I didn't expect that it was you. All right, even I was exposed, so there was no point in trying to get away with it." Yin Nuoxing shrugged, looked at him, and said seriously, "A long, long time ago. It started from the day I assumed the divine title of observer." Huey's expression changed slightly, and he was a little incredulous. Darkness and light are companions, but they will always suppress the light. There are shadows beside the light, and where there is no light, the power of darkness will be raised to the limit. But there is no place that is completely covered by light, just like the realm of the gods. The silver light on Yun Nuoxing's body faded, and she returned to her original appearance. She walked towards the edge of the clouds, and Hui followed closely behind her, not saying a word. Hui, look at this world. What does it look like? Beautiful, peaceful, quiet, prosperous, full of hope, full of vitality, Hui said almost subconsciously. But I can't see these. Yin Nuoxing let out a long sigh. His eyes became deep and profound. This world is fair. It bestows equality upon everyone. Everything is equal. However, that equality sometimes manifests itself in places that no one can see. Before it becomes a reality, everything comes to a full stop. This world is unfair. Before everyone is granted absolute fairness, that time will not come. This is the will of the great Yuan realm, a rule that cannot be changed. It is also because of this that most people's fate is in their own hands. Tens of trillions of beings, billions of beings, gathered in the first major world. Origin life forms, outsiders, many billions of beings casually taking a step forward would cause countless undercurrents in this world. That's right, undercurrents. Everything I see includes everything you see. This world is beautiful, stable, peaceful, and serene. This world is filled with war, strife, and calamity that never stops. Sin is buried beneath the earth. Human nature is evil, hopeless, and not worth saving. Hui was silent. He looked at the mountains and the land below. They were tens of thousands of miles high in the sky and could not see the edge of the land. It was vast and boundless, and it was the world that he loved. But this is not something that I can judge. This judgment is worthless to me. Yin Nuoxing sat down at the edge of the clouds, and her legs stretched out of the clouds and swayed gently. This is an inevitable negative effect brought about by this world moving forward. Darkness is eternal, and light is inextinguishable. It's the same principle. Everything in this world is dark, and the light in this world has never disappeared. What they're saying is what they are saying. There's only one truth. This is a series of products brought about by this world moving forward. It has nothing to do with good or bad. I have no intention of stopping its footsteps, and the divine title of observer does not allow me to do so. What I'm doing is just clearing the obstacles in front of it. That's right. It has nothing to do with good or bad. Just like the eternal dynasty that was destroyed by the mysterious power 1,225,991 years ago. Huey's expression changed. He knew of that dynasty. He had once said that if that dynasty was not destroyed, it would one day become the most powerful force in the realm of the gods. It seemed that the dynasty was destroyed 100 years after he said that. The dynasty, including the 12 Empyrean gods, was completely destroyed overnight without anyone noticing. What do you think they did wrong? That they were executed by that mysterious power. By me? We looked at Yun Nuoxing, who had a mysterious smile on her face, and shook his head blankly. They were doing something dangerous back then. I don't remember many details, but it seems to have something to do with those big, slumbering things underground. Perhaps they wanted to wake them up and get something from them. I don't remember. Anyway, that's the reason. If they had succeeded in doing that, the entire Prime Plane region would have been dragged into the abyss. You don't have to remember anything. No one would know on the surface. If the realm of the gods hadn't told me, I wouldn't know either. I've done similar things many times. At first, I was unwilling, then I became numb. Then, I judged that it was necessary to execute them. I don't feel anything anymore. It's a very simple judgment process. It's whoever is doing something suicidal. If they can't be stopped, they'll be executed immediately. Hui, if you were in my shoes, what would you do? You would try your best to persuade them and find a way to make them stop, wouldn't you? Humanitarianism? Or Shinto? Yin Nuoxing continued. But if you knew that their every action would cost not only their own lives, but countless people, even a world and half the void because of their actions, what would you think then? Would you kill them for something they didn't do, but would do? You wouldn't. You, who are always in the light, can't see the darkness. You wouldn't do such a thing. But someone must do such a thing. It's not for anyone. It's not for the common people. It's just so that the realm of the gods can continue to move forward. That's all. Hui raised his head and looked at him blankly. His gaze was a little dazed. Countless years. How many years had they walked together? Spring went and autumn came. The sea of time exhausted. All things turned into eternity. He felt as if this was the first time he got to know this close friend of his. For the first time, he knew that Yin Nuoxing didn't just lie lazily in the clouds all day long. Phone, what about you? The light that fell into the darkness. Me? Yin Nuoxing showed a self-deprecating smile. The element of extinction. Hui, haven't you seen clearly what I've become? That's right. That's a stupid question. Hui closed his eyes. He could only feel endless fatigue erupting from the depths of his body. That's why. I just need to bear all these. I don't want you to know, and I don't need you to know these things. Hui, you're someone who lives in the light. You don't need to know these things. You don't need to come into contact with these things. Forever. I hope that you never know. You just need to smile every day and live in the light. These things aren't that big of a deal. Hui looked at Yin Nuoxing's serious expression and lowered his gaze, even if he fell into eternal darkness. Chapter 1201. Pain, helplessness, tiredness. I didn't know what the big picture was. I just wanted to live every day leisurely, not caring about anything. I have no family in this world. If we're talking about family, Hui, you're probably the only one left. We've been through endless time together, and it hasn't changed for countless years. When I first came into contact with those things that were related to the big picture, I didn't care and resisted at first. That was why the disaster that broke out in the realm of the gods woke me up. Later, I pinched my nose and did it. I didn't want to, but I didn't want to see the big news in this world every few days. When I woke up again, I had become numb. I no longer judged anything based on my emotions. The observers I told me that there were abnormalities, so I eliminated them. Those people were all executed by me. Bloody, cruel, and ruthless. These are the words that best fit the description of the executioner in The Dark Knight. It's a list of the executioner. Later on, I was tired. Time was still the same. I began to understand some things. I no longer resolutely dealt with any abnormalities. Even so, there were still things that should have happened. I stood high above the clouds and looked down at this world. It was as if I was looking at a world that I had built. I watched it change little by little, grew little by little. Hui tilted his head and looked at Yin Nuoxing. He stared at that beautiful face as he calmly told the other half of the things that he didn't know. He remained silent and listened quietly. As he said, there was no absolute fairness in this world. This was the clergy that the realm of the gods had given to him. The other half that he shouldered belonged to the dark side. It was a world that he didn't know. It was a world that was dim. This world was not completely bright, nor was it completely dark. It was an exquisite gray. Those who stepped into the light would be guided by the guardian, and those who fell into the darkness would be punished by the observer. This world maintained its balance and would not be broken. Except for the external forces. The force that filled the void now was very dark. Its power was gradually dragging the entire realm of the 8 elements into the dark abyss. You still have things to do, right? Yin Nuoxing smiled. His smile was a little dazzling. We did not know why he could still smile after going through so much. You must be worried about the middle plane. Then go. I'll take care of the rear. Nothing will happen. We nodded silently. Phone, what do you think? There were quite a few people who saw that scene with me, and they weren't idiots. There's no way they'd be fooled by me. If an Empyrean god of origin were to die, while the expeditionary army was on an expedition to the middle planes, everyone would be panicking. Let's just talk about the facts. Let's say what the observer discovered and did. Yin Nuoxing waved her hand. Anyway, you've seen the information in the cluster of light. They will judge all of this on their own. Well, they are not stupid. Sooner or later, they will associate this matter with the observer they have never met. We stayed here for an entire day. He looked at Yin Nuoxing with a strange expression the entire time. It made the latter's hair stand on end. She felt like she was sitting on pins and needles the entire day. It was rare for her to be able to stay awake for an entire day, but it was all because she was scared. Huey's expression, "Feng, I'll leave the realm of the gods to you while I'm away." The next morning, we got up and left. They had important matters to attend to. What happened in the Middle Plain? They had come back suddenly and left the army of the three realms there. He was a little worried, so he stayed for an entire day. He was only relieved when he found that Yin Nuoxing was no different from before. Don't mess around before I come back. Don't make any big news. Now that 80% of the beings in the realm of the gods have left with us, there shouldn't be any abnormalities. Don't worry. Hurry up and go. Yin Nuoxing waved her hand lazily and rolled around on the cloud. Her eyelids twitched as if she was about to fall asleep. Hui shook his head in annoyance. If you have time, you should get up and move around. You've been sleeping all day and your bones are getting rusty. Yin Nuoxing's cheeks trembled fiercely and his mouth made a few murmurs. After thinking for a while, he felt that he still had to argue. He turned around abruptly, but Huey's figure had disappeared from the cloud behind him, which made him a little depressed. This guy was so fussy. How many years had passed? What could have happened to him? In the Guardian Temple, the heavenly gods of origin who had come back with Hui to support the realm of the gods looked at each other impatiently. They glanced at each other. There had been many messages from the Middle Plain. The expeditionary army that had just settled down seemed to be making a big move. As for what kind of big move it was, how would they know? Right now, they only wanted to rush over and take a look. Unfortunately, the leader of the expeditionary army hadn't returned yet, so they couldn't just run out on their own. This was one of the reasons why they were so anxious. The other reason was that they had seen the scene below the Taichu Divine Court yesterday. They had learned a lot of things from that ball of light and found it hard to believe. At this moment, the Guardian had chased after them again, so they could only wait here patiently. A dark blue teleportation gate suddenly appeared in the air, startling everyone. Huey's figure slowly emerged from it. The expression on his face was a little strange. He seemed to be in a good mood, but also a little more serious. As soon as he appeared, he stretched out his hand to everyone. "Let's go. There are still people waiting for us in the Middle Plain." Everyone nodded subconsciously. Then they were all stunned. Someone couldn't help but ask, "Lord Hui, what happened yesterday? Don't worry about what happened yesterday. You all know the cause and effect." Hui shook his head. "The realm of the gods is very safe. Many old friends are sleeping in the realm of the gods. The one you saw yesterday was one of them. They don't move much. They only come out to move their rusty bodies when there is a threat in the realm of the gods." "I see." Everyone heaved a sigh of relief. They were relieved to know that there were people guarding the realm of the gods when they left. After all, they didn't know how long they would be gone this time. What if they returned to the realm of the gods and saw a ruin? They wouldn't even have a place to cry. That was why they were slightly worried when they saw the scene yesterday. Now that they heard the Guardian's words, they were instantly relieved. They weren't worried about the battle at the front line. They were only worried that when they turned back, they would find that their home was gone. "Let's go. They're still waiting for us." Hui swung his robe and waved his hand. A huge dark blue hole was torn open in the space. The spatial energy rolled like a storm. He took the lead and walked into the passage. The others moved around and followed him into the teleportation gate. As everyone disappeared, the teleportation gate slowly closed. Only the remaining spatial energy was quietly dissipating. In a place countless distance away, a silver light flickered slightly, and the scene of the empty hall disappeared from his eyes. Yin Nuoxing rubbed his eyes, looked up at the empty sky, and was silent. For a moment, he suddenly felt a little bored and did not even plan to sleep. There's nothing to do. The strongest people left in the realm of the gods are only a few heavenly gods. So boring. Yin Nuoxing rolled around on the clouds, treating this vast and boundless cloud layer as a bed, and many messy thoughts ran through his mind. A few minutes later, he lifted his face that was buried in the clouds and slowly propped himself up. He said to himself, "I'm bored. Let's go take a look." She was crazy. She had said tens of millions of times that she wouldn't go. She wanted to stay behind and look after their home. Now that she was too bored, she wanted to go there. Yun Nuashing said she wanted to leave. She didn't leave immediately. She floated into the air, and the divine staff appeared in her hand. She held the divine staff in front of her with both hands. She closed her eyes and muttered to herself for a moment. A ray of silver light leaked out from the gap in her eyelids. She suddenly opened her eyes and stomped the divine staff in the air. A silver and colorful energy halo suddenly spread out and spread thousands of miles away. Buzz! The halo spread into the distance and then disappeared. However, the sky above the realm of the gods changed. A layer of transparent, colorful light covered the entire sky and spread from the ends of the horizon to the center. From the inside of the realm of the gods, it looked like a transparent energy membrane. But from the outside, it looked like a layer of crystal-like energy barrier. It appeared from the two ends of the realm of the gods and spread toward the center of the realm of the gods. It looked like a lid that was slowly closing and covering the realm of the gods. A faintly discernible rumble could be heard, indicating to Yun Nua that the seal had been completed. The sky became transparent again, so clear that one could see the bottom. The colorful and silver transparent energy film just now was not discovered by anyone. Yun Nuashing was just about to open a teleportation gate and rush out. His mind spun, and he suddenly stopped. He looked at the ground below and muttered to himself for a moment. Then, a transparent energy aura emerged from his body and floated to a meter in front of him. It wriggled and turned into his appearance. Yun Nuashing looked at the simple soul doppelganger and nodded. Well, it's not a problem if the guardian and observer are not in the realm of the gods. But the situation is different now. It's better to leave some tricks up our sleeves. The soul doppelganger tilted its head and looked at the main body blankly. It stood there silently and did not say a word. Just make do with it. I don't think anyone can break through the creation's barrier. Yun Nuashing grinned and said to the soul doppelganger, "When we're not here, you look after the realm of the gods." The soul doppelganger received the order and nodded. Its body swayed and dissipated into a transparent soul energy and merged into the creation's barrier. The element of nirvana hung on his back like a pair of soft wings. He reached out and stroked it. His eyes were cold as he looked at the realm of the gods. A moment later, his eyes became helpless. He smiled bitterly and said, "I hope nothing happens before I come back." In his memory, the realm of the gods did not end well in the Dark Age. He just did not know if it was caused by the war at the end of the era, or his body kept flying higher and higher. Gradually, he came to the outside of the realm of the gods. He looked down at the entire realm of the gods. This was the position. He felt dazed just standing there. In the dream, he was in this position. Yes, even the details were similar. He was sure that this was the place. He shook his head. It was a similar place, but not now. It happened at the end of this era. It was still early now. The 51st era had just reached the middle of the Dark Age. It was still early, but it passed in a flash. The middle plane was like a cage. The entire Eight Elements realm was like a cage. It was a huge cage that trapped the power of darkness. The war between the abyss of death fog and the world of order was like a war between prisoners and jailers. However, the ferocious prisoners were beyond the imagination of all the jailers. The defense line they built and all their defensive measures were disappearing at an extremely fast speed. The primordial realm, which had been reborn in the void for 11 eras, was suffering an unprecedented disaster. In the void, lines of formations, talismans, runes, as well as many energy networks and energy nodes were gradually collapsing. The large net they formed was being destroyed one by one under the corrosion of the dark power, and the bright void was gradually being extinguished. The defense line was collapsing. It was a premeditated collapse. It was deliberate. Yes, the many defense lines in the void were just defense lines. There was no life left to guard them. They were just lifeless things like magic circles and runes. If they were destroyed, then so be it. Many things have been damaged in this war. It was not a big deal to lose this little thing. When the oppressive power of darkness pushed into a place, the void suddenly burst with countless breaths of life. The life of order was gushing out like a fountain. The power gathered from thousands of worlds burst out at this moment, forcibly stopping the advancing abyss of death fog. Many people, countless lives from different worlds and places were burning their hot blood for the same goal at this moment. This phenomenon appeared everywhere in the void and burst out at the same time. Many places rose up at the same time. It was like serfs who had been oppressed for countless years had suddenly turned over. The encirclement that had pushed into half of the eight elements realm was facing an unprecedentedly strong resistance for the first time. It was even showing signs of being pushed back. Countless energies and countless lives were no longer gushing out like a fountain. Instead, they rushed out from the void like a waterfall. A large number of defensive measures and zones were launched at the same time. Defensive positions of various sizes were drawn in the void. When these positions were connected, they formed a somewhat crooked line. It was a dividing line that completely separated the craziest part of the void from the part of order. Wow, they're already fighting. When Yun Nuashing came to the void of the middle plane, this was the scene he saw. The flames of war soared into the sky. Even with the characteristics of the void, this level of indiscriminate energy bombardment could not be dealt with. The void was forcibly used as a normal battlefield for the battle. Seeing this, Yun Nuashing was stunned. Didn't they say that there were still 3 months? Oh yes, he was confused. Although the worlds in the void all lived on the same timeline, their own time was different. 3 months in the middle plane could be 1 or 2 years for some worlds that moved faster. Speaking of the timeline, Yun Nuashing tilted his head to look at the void, a dark yellow light appearing in his eyes. The hundreds of timeline worlds he knew had all collapsed into the main timeline, the axis of the origin. Perhaps there were even more worlds mixed in. As for how many there were to explore with the concept of infinity, there was no lower or upper limit to that number. Even so, the lower plane was still falling rapidly, and the entire process lasted almost 10 eras. Ah, he understood now. No wonder it took so long. The other timeline worlds had been forcibly merged into the axis of the origin. No wonder he felt that there was an abnormal time disturbance in the void recently. The multiple timeline worlds were originally parallel to each other. Now, the abyssal death mist was using an unreasonable force to squeeze them all together. No wonder it took 10 eras to break through the entire lower plane. Damn it, they were really planning to sweep through the entire primordial realm. Yun Nuashing was about to secretly tell Hui and the others about this discovery when he felt an unusually large and very familiar energy presence. His gaze immediately turned to a part of the void where a crack had opened. Figures with long auras that were enough to shake the void slowly appeared. Their arrival caused both sides to stiffen. The heavenly gods of origin from the upper plane, some of whom were powerful heavenly gods from the divine realm, had also appeared. It seemed that Hui and the others had been paying attention to the situation in the middle plane and had followed closely behind when they saw the heavenly gods of origin from the upper plane. I might be discovered if I hide here. Yun Nuashing rubbed his hair that was hanging down and stealthily retreated from the void. Although the chances of encountering a battle that permeated the entire void were very small, what if he was that lucky? It was best for him to slip away first. Besides, he wasn't here just to watch the show. Moving rapidly in the depths of the void, Yun Nuashing sensed the ridiculously thick battle zone, and even he was a little speechless. The dividing line between madness and order was the last line of defense, and the true battle zone stretched from there to the depths of the void. Even though he had been cruising in the void for several minutes, he could still feel the intense battle in the void he was in. Yun Nuashing passed through the battle zone peacefully. Nothing or anyone on either side had noticed him, and only the heavenly gods of origin could sneak past the abyssal death mist blockade. Once again, arriving at the lower plane and sensing that everything had quieted down, Yin Nuashing slowed down a little. His body began to float up from the depths of the void to the surface. Gradually, he could see world radiances appearing, and when he arrived at the void plane where the world radiances were, he saw a mess of ruins. Countless fragments of world radiances, as well as many inexplicable remains and corpses, were thrown carelessly into the void. It was another mass grave where endless worlds were buried, and the echoes of the destruction of worlds were quietly telling him of the tragedy here. It was as if weeping and complaining, and that sound filled the entire void. It was truly tragic. That was the feeling no matter how many times he looked at it. Who knew how many worlds and lives were buried in the void? It would take a great effort for the void to dissolve all of those remains into nothingness. Those world fragments did not naturally vanish. The entangled rules were exceedingly complex, and the more complex they were, the harder it would be for the void to break them down. It was a gravestone that would last for a very long time, perhaps even until the end of the void. Yin Nuashing moved horizontally through the void, looking sideways at the void graveyard. He silently closed his eyes and mourned for a few seconds before his body continued to leap through the void, passing through a portal and arriving at his destination. His vision swayed, and there were specks of starlight in the distance. He had sneaked into a certain world and observed the scene in this star field. His eyes fell on a planet below. It was an extremely strange planet. It was a territory that had been forcibly divided into two halves by some external force. The left half was full of violent and twisted dark forests. The dark forest entangled into a ball like a huge tumor reaching into the starry sky. It was like an eyeball, and its surface was covered with endless dark red patterns. The light it emitted was enough to make people go crazy. It was half distorted, and only half was left. The other half could not be more normal. White clouds, seas, and mountains covered the other half of the decaying world, as if everything was no different from any other world. Abnormal. So abnormal that it was as if it had lost its strength after being partially modified by the death shroud of the abyss. Even so, half of the planet was in fact large enough for it to maintain its existence and keep splitting. Yin Nuashing looked at the planet for some time, before turning his gaze even further away. It was a planetary system without any starlight, the entire space covered by a complete circle. The dark space was filled with unusual energy, and the range of that energy radiation just so happened to envelop the planet, forming that bizarre shape. The black hole of the abyss, he had come here again. If we knew that he had come here, he would definitely bring a carriage of people and rush over to tie him up and bring him back. That was why he had come here secretly, because he really could not let it go. The voice that he heard in this world, the unusual scene in the black hole of the abyss that he was extremely concerned about, was not a joke. He was really about to see something last time, but this time he had all the time. Yin Nuashing scratched his head. It's better to set a time energy ring, lest I sit here for 1,000 years. Let me think, let's set it for 1,000 years. 100 years. After 100 years, the middle plane had greatly changed. He thought carefully again and set it for a year. Then he sat lazily among the stars and began to meditate. Chapter 1202. What he saw in the darkness was a dazzling radiance, a dazzling and beautiful 5-colored radiance. Oh, this was not a bad sentence, and there was nothing wrong with it. This was the scene in the black hole of the abyss that Yin Nua planet saw at first glance. This scene could easily give people an illusion. They did not know whether the darkness was an illusion or the colorful light was an illusion. In any case, two things that should not have appeared together had appeared just like that. Why couldn't the darkness and the radiance appear? Because the concept and law of the abyssal black hole was darkness. That was a reality that could not be changed. That was one of the discordant aspects of the abyssal black hole. At first, it could not be seen. Yin Nuoxing changed his vision many times, allowing his eyes to adapt to many different laws. That was how such a thing appeared in the purest darkness of the abyssal black hole. Upon closer inspection, one would realize that the colorful radiance was a colorful fountain that spewed out endless energy from the mouth of the abyssal black hole. However, those energies could not escape the edge of the abyssal black hole. They would be pulled back by the gravitational force at the center of the abyssal black hole when they were close to the surface, forming a beautiful oval ring. The flickering radiance was a sign of their flow. Putting aside the abnormal and discordant scene, this was a rather beautiful place. The colorful radiance could decorate the dark, starry sky. Half a month had passed. This scene was the result of Yin Nuoxing's countless observations of the abyssal black hole. It was also the result of his first observation. He could already see this thing when he was forced to return to the realm of the gods by Hui Iya. Half a month had passed, and that was all he could see. The only improvement was that he could see only one color to the current colorful radiance. He did not know what the colors of the energy in the abyssal black hole represented. It was gorgeous and had a strange beauty. From the radiance, he could see something different. The land was dyed pink. The desert was covered in crystals and a crystal-like forest. Those were the things he saw when he stared at the radiance. And some of them were so beautiful that it was soul-stirring. Beautiful? No, that was a lie. Every scene in this place was a lie. He was not far from the abyssal black hole, and all around him was a pervasive presence of distortion. There was also a sense of oppression and repulsion everywhere. This feeling was now all over the void. How much damage it had caused, how many worlds it had destroyed. Who knew? Anyway, Yin Nuoxing didn't believe that it was related to anything beautiful. This place is really uncomfortable. Yin Nuoxing frowned. He had been doing this for 2 days. He had been sitting here for half a month, and he began to feel that something was wrong. The slight discomfort made him feel a little irritated. He always subconsciously looked around, trying to find the source of the discomfort. However, he did not need to look anywhere else. He only needed to look at the black hole in front of him. All the oppressive aura came from it. He was just too close to it and was within its radiation range, so he felt the oppressive aura coming from all directions. He also knew that he could not see anything by looking around. It was just a subconscious action, but he was already a little irritated now. Fortunately, he had only set an alarm clock for a year. Now it seemed that the alarm clock was not used. He had no chance to enter a deep meditative state at all. The reason was very simple. Early in the morning, the neighbor was roaring on the east side of the river. If it were anyone else, they probably would not be able to sleep. Well, except for some people. He had been constantly entering the range of the abyssal black hole for the past half a month. Yes, he had really entered it. The transparent barrier behind him had just opened not long ago, and he had slipped in through the hole. The oppressive aura he felt had nothing to do with that. He had already felt the unpleasant aura long before that. The unfriendly atmosphere had always existed here. He was just a little closer to it, and from the looks of it, he was not used to it. He was now thinking about what level of energy he should use to get rid of this thing so that he would no longer feel this uncomfortable aura. Well, this thought disappeared in a flash. He did not even know if he would be the one to get rid of this thing or if it would kill him. Buzz. Walala. Yin Nuoxing's mind was filled with irritation when he suddenly heard a ringing sound in his ears. He was stunned. How could this happen with his body structure? Before he could figure out what was going on, the ringing sound in his ears disappeared again. It was followed by the soft sound of water. It was very soft, but it was slowly getting louder. It was as if he was walking in a forest, and there was a waterfall deep in the forest. He followed the rugged mountain path around the forest and approached the waterfall. The sound of water was getting louder and louder. Yin Nuoxing immediately focused his attention. At this time, he realized that there was an unusually bright light in front of him. Beams of light that were as huge as galaxies rushed in front of him and stopped not far away from him. Then, as if they had suddenly retreated, they turned into a ring and fell backward. He was so focused on the sudden changes in front of him that he did not feel the irritation in his heart gradually weaken. He only focused on the light in front of him with a puzzled expression. It was really strange. He had been here for a few days, and this was the first time he had seen such a movement. However, the light in front of him was really bright, and it seemed to be gradually approaching him. Speaking of which, the light in the shape of an oval ring seemed a little familiar. He seemed to have seen it somewhere before, not too long ago. Yin Nuoxing suddenly reacted. Looking at the colorful lights in front of him that had formed a ring, cold sweat instantly dripped down. This was the energy beams that were floating in the black hole of the abyss. They looked weightless and light like ribbons. At this moment, they were right in front of him. He felt that he should retreat to a safe distance. He rubbed his palms behind him and carefully took a few steps back. Then, more cold sweat appeared. He slowly turned his stiff neck and looked behind him. He did not know when the distorted starlight had moved so far away from him. It was not that something strange had happened in the black hole of the abyss, but he did not know when he had approached the black hole of the abyss. It looked like he had been sucked in by it. His body was going to die. Well, he felt like he was going to die here. He did not feel any sense of death, and the heavenly origin god's almost prophetic ability was not triggered. Anyway, he felt like he was going to die. The dazzling, translucent, and blue energy beam was rapidly approaching him. He did not feel like he was falling or being sucked in at all. He only knew that he was constantly falling. He wanted to run away. In the last half a minute, he had thousands of thoughts of running away. However, the void travel, which had worked so well in the past, was now silent. Space and the void were ignoring him. In other words, he could not run away. His expression was as if he was constipated, and he did not feel anything respond to him for a long time. Yin Nuoxing took a deep breath. The heavenly origin god's energy was fully unleashed, forming the most powerful energy defense around his body. The elements of annihilation were frantically brewing in his palms. Just as he was about to do this, the energy beam that was as huge as a galaxy finally came crashing toward him. The boundless energy impact, the shattering of the barrier, the disintegration of the laws, and so on did not happen. Yin Nuoxing, who had mentally rehearsed this scene dozens of times, was stunned. He felt like he had been given the cold shoulder. Yin Nuoxing relaxed a little. However, he did not dare to relax completely in this place. After thinking for a while, he roughly understood why there was no collision. First of all, this dazzling brilliance was what he saw when he channeled the power of laws into his eyes. In layman's terms, he saw things that he could not see under normal circumstances. Things that could not be seen by the naked eye were generally untouchable in this state. However, he could feel it. That's right, he could still feel it. When his body fell into the energy beam that was a fusion of ice and blue, he could indeed feel a huge amount of energy flowing past the layer of energy barrier on the surface of his body. It was like an endless river flowing past him. He could even hear a faint rustling sound echoing in his ears. The scene in front of him changed. He seemed to see a snowy white continent in front of him. The wind and snow covered the icebergs and glaciers below. The frozen continent was so vast that it was jaw-dropping. He could not see the end of this continent, even with his eyesight. However, he could see the entire divine realm with a single glance. Without the help of the observer's eye, it was true. With the Empyrean God's level, it was normal for him to see the entire world with a single glance. However, he could not see the end of this continent in front of him. Moreover, he was sure that there were no repeating shapes in this distant place. He thought for a while and connected the scene in front of him with the illusion that he was imagining. He felt that it was natural that he could not see the end of this place. He nodded subconsciously, then reached out and dug out a ball of snow. Yin Nuoxing. He stared blankly at the ball of snow in his hand for a long time. It felt like a year. He only reacted when part of the ball of snow in his hand began to melt under the influence of his body temperature. The faint chill stimulated his senses and made him realize that this was not an illusion. I think that there's something wrong with my soul. Yin Nuashing felt that the strange energy in this place was causing a part of his senses to be unable to recognize normally. Well, it should be a part of it. He did not know if there was a problem with his vision or his sense of touch. In any case, there was a problem. He would not be surprised by anything that happened in this abyss. There's no problem. This is a strange place. Your senses will deceive you. Your soul will deceive your consciousness. And your consciousness will deceive your senses until you can no longer recognize yourself. This ethereal voice made Yin Nuashing immediately go on alert. The Netherruin's sword shot out with a clang and pointed to the side. The destructive nature of the Netherruin's sword cut a huge crack in the icy ground in front of him. A pure white figure appeared from the dark shadows. Its appearance caused the energy beam in front of him to shift sideways. After a while, Yin Nuashing saw the energy beam quickly leave behind him. The snow-covered continent also disappeared from his sight. However, his still wet palms told him that it was not an illusion. At least, it was not all an illusion. Yin Nuashing stared at the pure white figure. It looked a little like him in that state. Its entire body was releasing a silver-white light. It was so bright that he could not see it clearly. It was not as bright as him. The person in front of him could be considered a person for the time being. After all, the appearance was quite similar. However, he could not tell whether the person was a man or a woman. He could not tell what the person looked like. How should he put it? It was like a ball of light had turned into a human form. Or rather, a person's body had turned into a pure silver-white light. Who are you? Yin Nuashing's sharp senses noticed that his fall had stopped. He had stopped in this place where everything was dark. The distorted starry sky had become a hollow cylinder, twisted into rings and circles. As for the surrounding environment, it was still the same. However, he could clearly feel that the oppressive feeling was gone. It was completely gone. He seemed to be standing in a world with infinite order. The only difference was that he could not feel the presence of order. While he was questioning, he still had the mind to look around. The only thought that came to his mind was to escape. However, he did not know how to do so. Half an hour ago, his connection with the void and space had been completely severed. Now he was trapped in this damned place. He did not know whether it was a person or a ghost in this damned place. What could he do? He was really desperate. Once he was desperate, his mind would start to wander. If he had known this would happen, he would have listened to Hui and stayed in the realm of the gods. If he had known this would happen, he would not have come to this place. If he had not come here, he would not have seen a ghost. My apologies. I'm not a ghost. The white light in front of him suddenly spoke. His voice was ethereal, even softer than the sound of the wind. However, it was firmly imprinted in his mind, causing him to turn pale with fright. He had indeed seen a ghost today. He did not know what kind of ghost he had met, but it could even read his mind. The white light in front of him seemed to be a little resentful. He shook his head helplessly and did not intend to correct him. He floated in front of Yin Nuashing and looked at him with interest. This is the first time I know that there is another thing in this world. This world, Yin Nuashing frowned. Yes, this is the world. It's infinite. There are only floating colors everywhere. Other than that, it's just a black hole. There's nothing else. The white light in front of Yin Nuashing stopped 1 meter in front of him. He looked at Yin Nuashing. You seem a little different from me. Yin Nuashing smiled bitterly. You don't even have a face. You only have a rough outline of your body. It would be a miracle if you could be the same. Oh, he had really seen a ghost today. Can you stop talking about ghosts? You're the ghost. The white light in front of Yin Nuashing angrily waved his small fist at Yin Nuashing. Then he said in the next second, I don't have a face. Appearance. So you need an appearance to communicate with other things? Yin Nuashing grimaced. He felt uncomfortable all over, and his hair stood on end. The feeling of having his mind read by someone else was really terrible. Ah, you don't like me looking at you? The white light in front of him tilted his head. The colors dimmed a little and brightened a little. He seemed to be expressing some emotions, as if he was thinking about something. You call this looking? Yin Nuashing had a headache. Please, you're reading my mind. You're reading my mind. How can I be happy when you're reading my mind? Ah, but that's what you told me. White light scratched his head. Your thoughts are constantly drilling into my body. You're thinking about a lot of things. You woke me up. Me? Yin was dumbfounded. Yes. White light nodded. The light in his body flickered a few more times. Then he looked Yin up and down. Yin hair stood on end, and he had goosebumps all over his body. Then, the figure that was just a ball of light slowly changed in the next second. His body became contoured, and his face also changed a little. Yin looked at the ball of light that was changing into a living person. Moreover, this blurry appearance, before he could recognize the faint contour, White Light's figure froze. His blue-golden hair fluttered in the wind. His figure was tall and slender, coupled with his blank expression. Yes, he was a living example of a silly dragon. This told him two things. The first was that he had indeed brought back the memories of dozens of years later. The second was that fellow was indeed peeping at his memories. You're the one who instilled it in me. You even woke me up. Bing Air put her hands on her waist and said angrily to him. This made Yin collapse even more. He felt that he might have been dreaming the whole day. He had a bad dream. Perhaps it had something to do with sleeping too much. It's not a dream. Forget it. White Light sighed and gave up on talking nonsense with him. Then he asked, "What are you doing here?" How would I know what I'm doing here?" Yin rolled his eyes fiercely. He had nothing better to do. Also, can you change your appearance? It feels a little awkward. When he thought of that silly dragon having such a vivid expression, he felt that his worldview had been turned upside down. Bing Air wrinkled her nose. The light on her body rippled like water. Then, in the blink of an eye, a new appearance appeared. She had long dark purple hair and a long purple dress. She said in the same voice as the owner of this appearance, "How about this one? I think she occupies a lot of weight in your mind." "Ah, what do you mean by a lot of weight? I think you must be wrong." Yin jumped up with a cry. His face was slightly red. "I can't be wrong. Your mind is not disguised. Even if it is disguised, I can still see through it," Xian said firmly. Then she said, "Well, if you care so much, I can change to another one. I think the other one has a lot of weight, too." Don't. A ray of light flashed. White Light changed again. This time, it turned into Feng Air's appearance. Yin face fell. "What are you doing here?" "I didn't do anything. There's nothing I can do," Feng Air said in a matter-of-fact tone. "It's you who came into my world. I wanted to ask you what you were doing here. You disturbed my sleep." Well, that was a very honest speech. Yin felt that he must have a lot in common with her. "Bah, this is your world?" Yin noticed what he said just now. When she thought of what he said before, she felt a chill down her spine. Well, White Light was silent for a moment. Then it scratched its head and muttered, "I thought so. But there are no flowers or plants in this world. There are no mountains or lakes. There are not many things that should be in a world. Can it be called a world?" Yin was stunned for a moment. After a while, she reacted. Did White Light see the appearance of another world from her memory? So, she felt that this eternal dark and lonely world, where there was only light as a companion, and light that couldn't be seen by ordinary means, couldn't be called a world? "Who are you?" Feng Air turned her head and looked at him. "Me? I don't know. I've been here since I had consciousness. I've been floating for a long time. There's nothing but emptiness and endless darkness. I've been floating here for a long time. It wasn't until a long time later that I made the appearance, just now." After a moment, Feng Air showed a silly smile. "I don't know who I am either." Yin was speechless. He almost fell into the abyss. Yes, this is my consciousness. The real me is there." Feng Air stretched out her slender finger and pointed downwards. Yin swallowed and turned his head in fear. To be honest, he was a little afraid of the space below. Who knew what else he could see? But since he had seen a ghost, he wouldn't be surprised if he saw something else. Then, he looked down behind him. As expected, he saw a lot of light. It pointed to the center where all the light converged, the center of the abyss. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.